Today on
Doomed!
Over the past 11 days, all of the work former President Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, did over the past 4 years to secure peace in the Middle East was just tossed straight out the window. Obviously, none of that's true. I'm joking a little bit there. Well, more than a little bit. But anyway, on today's show, on today's Doomed with Matt Binder, we'll dive into what exactly has been going on in Gaza and bring you the latest on Israel-Palestine. And before we go any further, first, let me bring up my guest for today. Let me pull him up on the stream here. Here we go. Mohamad Habehh, the National Development Coordinator for American Muslims for Palestine. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Matt.
Now, Mohamad, thank you so much for being here. And, you know, we're here. Well, I guess I should mention right up top, just in case anyone it really wasn't sure. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, did not secure peace in the Middle East. Big surprise. I'm sorry, everybody. Didn't happen. But you know, we're here talking just literally an hour or two after, well, a few hours now, I think, after a ceasefire was just announced between, I mean, really, and it tells you a lot in just exactly who the ceasefire is between and how it's been covered rightfully. The ceasefire is between Israel, the country, and Hamas, which you might notice that's not the word Palestinians or Palestine or Gaza. I mean, I think it's very important that people really see that and don't just read that and not understand. And if you don't understand why I'm pointing that out, we'll get into that. But I mean, tell us a little bit about this ceasefire.
I think it's important to note that this is something that the Palestinians have been looking for. The past 11 days have just been pure destruction and devastation to the people of Gaza. Over 230 people killed, for 60 of them children. 90,000 people internally displaced in Gaza. And to put that into perspective, Gaza is about 20 miles long. Gaza is a very small area. It's smaller than your average county in a state here in America. And the truth is, when we talk about what Israel has been doing to Gaza, we need to understand that they have gone out of their way to destroy those people, to destroy the people in Gaza, bombing indiscriminately, destroying anything they can. It was reported just the other day that some of the bombs they were using were considered bunker busters. These are bombs that are designed to destroy bunkers that people hide in because of bombs. And these bombs are destroying 13-story buildings, apartment buildings, office buildings, facilities that are used by multiple people. Just the other day, they bombed one of the largest bookstores in the city of Gaza. So when we talk about what they're bombing and who they're bombing, it's important to understand they're bombing everyone. And when we talk about one of the most advanced militaries in the world, these guys have the ability not to bomb civilians. They have the ability not to kill kids. If they have the ability to call people and tell them, hey, we're about to bomb your building, they know who's in there. They know what to do. And the truth is, when we talk about this ceasefire, it's important to note for the longest time, America wasn't behind it. Our president Biden was not saying anything, and he wasn't doing his best to urge the Israelis to come down to the table. At the end of the day, this only lasted this long. The bombing only lasted this long because because Israel wanted to bomb and wanted to punish the Gazan people.
Right.
They wanted to punish the Palestinians, and they wanted to make an example out of them. And we saw with the people of Gaza, even though their area was being bombed, their area was being destroyed, even though they have been under siege for over a decade now. For over a decade now, they still stood tall and they still stood proud.
Right. Now, with this ceasefire, this goes into effect. It seems like it's gone into effect, and what we are going to dive further into this, but this just broke, and I want to just get this up top because this is pretty much where we're going to be working from going forward. What's next? What happens next? I mean, does this do you think this lasts for another decent amount of time, and then there's obviously this doesn't solve anything, and there'll surely be something. I mean, they're still evicting the people whose homes, who the evictions that basically sparked this most recent attack. I mean, what are we looking at going forward right here?
Well, I think it's definitely important to contextualize everything that's going on. There are Palestinians all over historic Palestine who are doing different things, who are going through different forms of Israeli apartheid and Israeli oppression. They're the Palestinians who live in the 1948 territories who are considered citizens of Israel but are treated as second class citizens. Those people are fighting Israeli settlers who are dealing with Israeli settlers in cities like Lid, in cities like Jaffa, where there are marauding groups of settlers just walking around attacking Palestinians, attacking people who aren't Jewish. And there have been videos circulating online. Those problems haven't stopped. The problems in Lid, the problems in Jaffa, problems all around historic Palestine didn't stop. Then when we talk about the West Bank is still dealing with growing settlements. That's in areas like Sheikh Jarrah, as we talked about, in the area of Silwan, which is also a suburb of Jerusalem, and all over the West Bank. In addition to that, Israeli apartheid is still alive and healthy. Just because they're not bombing Gaza does not mean their apartheid policies and their apartheid system stopped. So they're going to continue oppressing Palestinians. When we say there's a ceasefire, it means they just stopped bombing. They're still going to do everything else. Gaza is still under siege. The people of Gaza still do not have clean water. Over 90% of the water in the aquifer in Gaza is undrinkable. And in 2014, the UN stated that Gaza would be comparable to Mars by 2020. It's now 2021. They just bombed Gaza. They forced 90,000 people out of their homes because they destroyed their homes. And unemployment is still up, and the people are still dealing with this siege. And when we talk about this, like, it's important to understand that America is complicit in the apartheid crimes of Israel. We're complicit in it. Why? Because we're giving them money. We're giving them our money. We are helping fund their weapons. The
We give them a
checkpoints, the
lot of money.
bombs.
We give them a lot of money. Yeah, it's
Exact 3.8 billion a year. So when we talk about the bombs that are raining down on them, when we talk about the checkpoints, when we talk about the guns in the soldiers' hands, those are coming from America. So
right.
it's very important for us to talk about it and to think, what can we do? And groups like American Muslims for Palestine are doing their best to give opportunities for people here in America who want to make sure that their money is no longer complicit in Israel's crimes.
Right. Now that we spoke about this latest breaking news, I want to sort of set the stage here for this episode. Now, I really want people to be able to watch this episode or to listen to it as a podcast after and be able to basically dispel or debunk or just argue against so many of what we see out there now and I think is becoming very obvious to people, these sort of talking points that are prepared to you hear them every time Israel Palestine's in the news, and I think people are really, I think in a lot of ways the wall is starting to crack. The tide is turning. People are really starting to wake up to what's going on, And who are the, like that meme is, are we the baddies here? I mean, I think people are starting to see who the baddies are here. And I think though that even though they're seeing this, I feel like the side of defending the far right government of Israel, which is always going to be shocking to me. And I think advocates and activists for the Palestinian people, I think really we need to get better, especially now after Trump, get better at letting those people see, because there were so many people in this country who hated Trump. They need to understand that Netanyahu is Trump's bestie. Like everything they were scared about Putin, like that's actually Netanyahu. In fact, it's even worse because while Putin, you think, had to, destroy American democracy and meddle in our elections to make Trump win, so his friend could get in there as the president of the United States, or at least someone who he could use as a puppet. Um, what we're seeing here with Netanyahu is he doesn't care about that because he doesn't need to, meddle in the elections. He's got the Republicans and the Democrats, most of the Democrats, certainly Biden, in his wrapped around his fingers. Like they are. We've seen it. We could just see it with Biden. All these news stories coming out where, Biden had to publicly defend Israel and Netanyahu, but but quietly, we assure you, he was saying, "Hey, knock it out. This is not good." Like, come on. Like, it's pretty clear that at the end of the day, unfortunately, the Republicans and at least mainstream Democrats or the establishment Democrats are all out there defending Israel no matter what. And I just think, if that connection to Netanyahu and the Israeli government for sure as a whole, to the right wing in the United States, to Trump, I think even more people will turn. But anyway, without doing that, the tide is turning. And in this episode, I really want to give people what they can do to, when they come across these talking points. And we'll get into a bunch of them as we discuss further. So, starting off, I think we should let people know, and they probably heard by now, but let's discuss it. What sparked this? I mean, I feel like people have heard. I mean, obviously, we can and we will in a little bit go back many, many decades. But what sparked these recent events? I think everyone hears about evictions and they don't quite understand what that means if they haven't really looked into it. What, did these people not pay their landlords or something? Let's explain what's going on here.
Definitely, definitely. And I think it's important to note that Israel, as an apartheid state, as a settler colonial state, is constantly going out of their way to harm and violate the indigenous people, which are the Palestinians. Israel will do whatever they can to bother the indigenous people, no matter who they are, what they believe in, and what they're doing. And we've seen this. Obviously, this is how all settler colonial states act. And we see that this latest situation, for lack of a better term, started with Sheikh Jarrah. Sheikh Jarrah is a suburb of Jerusalem in which Palestinian families are currently going through what Israel has been doing for 73 years, ethnically cleansing them, ethnically cleansing this Palestinian village. Why are they doing it? Because they want to. There's no better way to talk about it. I mean, in all seriousness, when we talk about the way Israel has been taking away Palestinian homes in the West Bank, it's criminal. It's disturbing. And the fact that there are white people from Brooklyn, from different areas here in this country, we all saw the video of a man with a clear American accent telling a woman that if he didn't take her home, that someone else would. We all saw that.
Oh, he's
So we're
from.
talking.
I looked into that guy. And I discovered he did a Vice interview. Like there was a long Vice piece that I think it was published today actually, and
Mhm,
in there is like a short, like 30 seconds with that guy, and
mhm,
he's literally from Long Island.
mhm. Yeah, he had that New York accent. So I'm from Jersey. I could tell when people from across the water, low key. But that's the truth. That's the truth. We have people who are literally American citizens going over there and stealing people's homes. And this is going on. This is going on right now in Sheikh Jarrah. It's going on right now in the city of Al Khalil. It is going on right now in different areas in the West Bank, and it is the story of Israel. If you want to know how Israel became a state, it's that white dude from Long Island. That's how Israel was founded. That's how Israel became a state. They came, they started stealing Palestinian land. I can't give it back to you because if I don't take it, someone else will. That's the story of Israel. That's the decades old story of Israel. And when we talk about Sheikh Jarrah has been facing these attempts at ethnic cleansing since 2008. Israel has a law that allows Jews, and when I say Jews, I mean because in Israel, Jews are considered a majority, and they're considered a group of people. It allows Jews, literally allows Jews, to lay claim to areas in the West Bank and take it back by force. Because their argument is that they had to leave it during 1948, and when we came back in 1967, oh well, someone was living in our house. It's funny because Israel denies the right of return to Palestinian refugees. Israel denies the right of return to Palestinians who have been forced into exile in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Egypt, and all around the world. People who are forced out of their homes are not allowed the right to return, even though it is a internationally given right. And it's definitely it's sad, to say the least, that a country is obviously not allowing the rightful owners of their home to go back, while also giving people from Long Island the right to go live in someone else's home.
Right.
And Sheikh Jarrah recently erupted because before Ramadan, the Israeli courts allowed for Palestinian families to be forced out of their homes. And the only reason it stopped is because of the popular support that came out for the residents of Sheikh Jarrah. And we've seen the media attention, the amount of people who've come out to speak for them, the people who from the village itself who have been taking to social media to show what these Israeli settlers are doing to them. And I think they've done a very good job. But in response to that, we've seen Israeli settlers go out of their way. Right wing leaders in Israel have gone to Sheikh Jarrah to encourage Israeli settlers to do more harm to the Palestinians. And we've seen these settlers coming into Sheikh Jarrah, attacking the people, breaking into homes in the middle of the night. And as it increased, we also saw in the month of Ramadan these same settlers, these same bigots walking through the streets of Jerusalem chanting death to Arabs. In the most holy time for Muslims during the year, in the holy month of Ramadan, we see these same people, these same bigots, marching through the streets of one of the most holy places in Islam, chanting death to Arabs. And these were the stories coming out over a month ago.
Right.
Over a month ago. And it brings the question, where was the media then? Well, and when the media got involved, what did they say? Oh, it was clashes between Palestinians and Israeli police. It's and that's the way it was talked about in the beginning, and slowly more information started coming out. More Palestinians were speaking out, giving their stories, and we saw because of that the international solidarity grow. And of course, the more the Palestinians stood tall and the more the Palestinians stood up for themselves, we saw Israel step in on the side of the settlers time and time again. And it all erupted in the last and final nights of the holy month of Ramadan, when Israeli forces attacked the one of the most holy mosques in our religion,
Right.
in the middle of prayer, where we saw tear gas being thrown at worshipers, where we saw flashbangs being thrown at worshipers. And I hope many Americans definitely understand at this point how tear gas and how flashbangs feel, because we faced it last year against the police. You know, when we was protesting here in Washington, D.C., we faced these same tools that they were using against the Palestinians.
Right, and I want to also stress here that these, I mean, you could probably tell from the flashbangs and the tear gas, this isn't obviously what you explained about those right wing groups that we're chanting and everything. Someone could say, oh, every play, we have Proud Boys and here, but this was the IDF. These were Israeli forces. This was a government backed thing that happened in this mosque. This wasn't just some like unruly mob of right wingers.
Hmm. No, definitely. Yeah, it was. It was. Well, I mean, if you ask a Palestinian, they're all right wingers, and they all act the same way. And at the end of the day, the fact that they entered the mosque to do it, and on the 28th day of Ramadan, which this year coincided with a settler holiday, for lack of a better term, a day where they celebrate the fact that they ethnically cleansed Jerusalem, that they began their ethnic cleansing of Jerusalem, and they call it Jerusalem Day. And on that day, they enter the mosque, they enter the holy mosque, and they kick out all the Palestinians, and they celebrate their a symbolic return. And it's of course, like when we talk about settler colonialism and we talk about settler colonies around the world, one of the things that they do is they try to destroy the indigenous religion. Then they destroy the relics of the indigenous religion, and they destroy the houses of worship. And when you talk to Palestinian Muslims and Christians, you see that when it comes to their holy days, when it comes to their holidays, they deal with increased suppression. They deal with this increased oppression that happens to them. And this year it happened during Easter to our Palestinian Christian brothers and sisters. They had to deal with it. We saw priests being arrested and being harmed by Israeli forces. And of course, it happened with us during Ramadan. We see that when it comes to the Holy Mosque, we see that they are constantly either trying to force security measures on us, even though Israel has no claim to the Holy Mosque. They have no control over it. They still try to change the facts on the ground by inserting new security measures and things like that. And constantly, the Palestinians are protesting. And a better example of what they do is the Ibrahimi Mosque in the city of Al Khalil. The Ibrahimi Mosque in the city of Al Khalil in the 90s, in the mid 90s, another white man from Brooklyn walked into this mosque and with a high caliber weapon and murdered dozens of Palestinians, injured over 100, injured many of them, I should say, in the middle of the month of Ramadan. Um, and when Israeli forces got in, this man, his name was Baruch Goldstein. He is literally from Brooklyn. Um, when Israeli forces got in, they decided to segregate the mosque. They turned the mosque into not just a mosque, but they said, you know what? Let's give some of this mosque to the local Jews. Even though there aren't many Israeli settlers in the city of Al Khalil. In the city of Al Khalil, it's obviously majority Palestinian, and there are a couple thousand Israeli settlers. But it is one of the most segregated cities in the world. And there was a documentary calling it a couple years back that said it was one of the most dangerous school commutes for anyone, where Palestinian children couldn't even go to school some days because Israeli settlers would wait for them and just throw rocks. Israeli forces would kidnap them and things like that. So when we're talking about what's been going on recently in the recent situation, it's all been leading into this escalation that happened in Gaza. And the truth is, the Palestinians had been resisting this ethnic cleansing in Sheikh Jarrah, resisting the ethnic cleansing in Jerusalem, resisting Zionist forces trying to attack and disturb the holy mosque in the last nights of the holy month, and it all led into the bombing and the destruction of Gaza.
Now, before we go to, I want to just go back for 1 second because you went through a lot there, and I want to just, um, one of the things that you constantly saw when these evictions happened, and then I even saw one person try to defend it as, well, the Israeli owners of those homes now, they're letting. They said the Palestinian people could continue living there if they just paid their rent. Which
Hmm.
imagine you've been living in a home for who knows how many decades, and all of a sudden someone shows up, knocks on your door, and says, "Hey, I'm here to collect the rent." I mean, that sounds like you could throw that scene in an episode of The Sopranos, and it's a good old
Hmm.
Italian mafia shakedown. I mean, but one thing you constantly saw here was bringing up this court in Israel that basically ruled in favor of those Israeli settlers who were taking over these homes. And one thing you saw was, and there's Muslims on this court. And it's just like, to me, it's just like, think about it this way. This is a rhetorical question, first of all, Mohammed. Is Gaza part of Israel? No, right? Exactly. Now imagine someone imagine the Canadian Supreme Court, or the Supreme Court in Mexico, or Supreme Court anywhere else, a court anywhere, all of a sudden ruled that, hey, Americans in this neighborhood, it's no longer yours, it's these people's. It just
Hmm.
doesn't fly. Why do people like that? Really was like, how do you think that's okay to use that as a argument? Like, imagine another country's court saying, ruling that you no longer own your home. It just like, and people were using that as an actual like defense
Of
of
course,
this whole thing.
of course, and I'd also add, um, Israeli courts don't have jurisdiction over the West Bank. Israel should not have jurisdiction over the West Bank. Israel is occupying the West Bank. Sheikh Jarrah is a part of the West Bank because it's a part of East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem is occupied, and the reason why the international community has been speaking so loudly about this is because it is a war crime. It is illegal under international law to move people into occupied land. They're literally inserting people to areas they don't belong, stealing people's homes in the process. And when we talk about Israeli courts, how just can a court be? When we're talking about just courts, how could it be just when it's taking a case like this in a jurisdiction that it doesn't belong in? And it's also part of a settler colonial state. How fair will it be to the indigenous people?
Right. And now let's go into a little bit about what's been done. At least because obviously this all sounds, and we're going to get further into it in a little bit. But I want to focus on this recent issue with the evictions. What is being done that in a positive sense? Like we were discussing, before we came on the show started, that I was telling you how I really feel like the tide is turning here, and we're really starting to see a different. I think I even mentioned it on the show a couple minutes ago. But we saw some people. It was rare, but we saw some people stand up and actually, people who are in power, stand up and do something about it. Unfortunately, we didn't see it from the president and the cabinet members and his administration, but we did see some elected officials actually stand up and say that this is wrong and this is what we're going to do about it.
Hmm. Yes, yes, I think that's important. So when we talk about the tide turning, this has been building up for years. When American Muslims for Palestine has been around for over a decade now, and I'll be honest with you, in this decade, we've taken strides that no one had ever dreamed of. If we wouldn't be having this conversation 10 years ago. We wouldn't be having this conversation 5 years ago. There has been this recent movement, and there's been a lot of changes going on in the past couple of years. And definitely, I think that it's very important to note that in the past 6 to 8 weeks, we have seen four letters, congressional letters circulated in support of Palestinian rights, in support of Palestinians getting vaccines, that Israel must vaccinate Palestinians, which is something we can't even talk about now because Israel won't stop bombing Palestinians. Um, and then when after the news about Sheikh Jarrah broke, around 25 members of Congress signed a letter that went to the Secretary of State in support of the people of Sheikh Jarrah. Um, these are numbers we haven't heard of before. And just a few weeks ago, Congresswoman Betty McCollum dropped Bill HR 2590. This bill, in support of Palestinian children and their families, is aimed to take away money from Israel for arresting Palestinian children, for hurting Palestinian children. It's a very important bill, and it's been circulating a lot now since the recent situation began. Multiple members of Congress have actually signed onto this bill in support of it, because of the aggression of Israel. And then just yesterday, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio Cortez dropped a resolution, I should say, uh, aimed at taking and stopping the sale of weapons to Israel, over $735 million worth of weapons that would be going to Israel. How sick is it that as they're bombing innocent children, killing innocent children, killing the people of Gaza, and destroying their homes, that we're talking about giving them more weapons? And I think it's definitely very important to note that in the past this wouldn't have been talked about. Um, and the reason why it was mentioned and why it became a big deal is because the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee put a halt on it. He put a halt on it. And I think that's very important because in the past he wouldn't have put a halt on it. He wouldn't have said anything about it. So he put this halt on it, and then obviously he took the halt off after he was pressured to stop, and he made his excuses and everything. Um, but then AOC dropped this resolution yesterday. Yesterday it was just a House resolution, and we had multiple members of Congress join in. Today, Senator Sanders dropped a Senate companion resolution, and that's very important. And now, we at AMP, and we've been doing our best to help mobilize people around the country to reach out to their elected officials about this. This is very important stuff. This could be the first time in history that we hold our relationship, and we hold Israel accountable. And I think it's very important that as we're still seeing the destruction that happened in Gaza, as there are children who still haven't been buried yet in Gaza, we can't afford to keep giving Israel weapons that they are using on the indigenous population of Palestine, killing Palestinians, and doing their best to destroy our homes and the areas we live in.
Right. I think, and I think there's a perfect. We're gonna segue into some of those. We're gonna really just dive into some of those talking points that people use to stifle discussion and legit criticism about Israel. And I think this is the perfect spot to do that in, because I just want to stress how important it is for someone like Senator Bernie Sanders to stand up and do that, because here you have who I don't think anyone would disagree with this, the highest profile Jewish person in American politics, possibly in the political history of the United States. Um, Bernie Sanders stand up and do this, and on top of that, I do think that you've seen. We've been saying, the tide is turning and people starting to open up, but I think also, what you're seeing is some of the strongest critics of Israel and the people who are standing up for the Palestinian people are American Jews, specifically young American Jews. I mean, I know the Palestinian people don't have time to wait, obviously, so we can't just sit back and say things will change as time goes on. But there is no way this continues down the line. Just a few more decades like this, because it's just like, who is going to be left to defend Israel's actions if American Jews are all standing up and saying enough? I mean, it is, and that to me is always the thing about they're running. This is the number one of the number one tropes. You criticize Israel, oh, it's anti-Semitic. I'm sorry, but if you listen to just look at our conversation we've had here. The only time up until this point where we're obviously discussing this issue, up until this point, the only time either of us brought up, the word Jewish or Jew was when we were discussing religious places, or B, when we were discussing the word Jew or Jewish that's actually used in Israeli law.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, no one is criticizing or going after the Jewish people. The criticism is solely with the state of Israel.
Of course, and I think it's definitely important when we talk about this. It's important to note that there is a difference between the way Palestinians talk about Palestine, talk about the ethnic cleansing and the settler colonialism we've been dealing with for over 73 years now, and what's going on, what's been happening with Jewish people around the world and even here in America. When we talk about anti-Semitism in America and the way anti-Semitism is perpetuated in America, it's definitely something we need to understand, and we need to stand up for our Jewish brothers and sisters, of course. But I think when we talk about what's going on in Palestine, Palestinians are the only people who are told they have to think about their oppressors suffering ever. When as we're attacked by people who,
Right.
if you ask Netanyahu, if you ask these settlers what they're who they are and what Israel is, they'll tell you Israel is a Jewish country. So there are certain things that we can't get away from. But of course, at the end of the day, we always have to stand up for the oppressed, no matter who they are, no matter where they are. And that goes for the Palestinian people as well. Palestinian people are being oppressed by Zionists, by people who are Jewish people. But when we talk about our pain and when we talk about our suffering, we're not talking about them because they're Jewish. We're talking about them because they're hurting us. We're talking about them because they're stealing our land. We're talking about them because they're killing us. And I think it's very important, and for allies and for people around, it's important for us to understand that we need to support the oppressed, no matter who they are, no matter who's oppressing them. Whether or not that oppressor, is someone we look up to or someone we support. We must be able to hold the oppressors accountable, no matter who they are, no matter what they're doing, no matter how they're oppressing these people.
Right. Now, another talking point we usually hear, once you get to once you start the discussion, another one you hear is, Israel's right to defend itself, and I mean, it's always amazing to me what the specific use of the word defend, as if Israel is not the one on the offensive. I mean, we're talking about a people and a place that does not have a military of its own. The Palestinian people do not have a military. And I mean, who is the state of Israel defending themselves from when they're deploying the IDF? I mean, what other country would we say it's okay for them to deploy their military unit to engage in warfare with a non-militarized group of people? I mean, it's just insanity. And then, of course, the idea that is Israel defending itself in the first place? Which, I mean, come on. I
Hmm.
mean, you see it, and I brought this. I was on the majority report earlier today, and I brought this up. You brought up earlier how important social media was to the people in these areas, the Palestinian people who were being evicted, to show what was happening to them. And I mean, you just could use social media yourself to see the difference between how these two sides are affected by this quote unquote conflict, which everyone likes to use. You look
Hmm.
at someone in Israel posting, for example, oh, they were, eating at a restaurant outside and they had to flee their brunch to go to a bomb shelter because there were some rockets headed to their area. Or, they post a photo of them ducking behind a wall crying. And, that's very unfortunate. I don't want to see any innocent civilians fearing for their lives and distraught like that. But at the same time, that is what they are using to show the worst of what they are seeing. And we know from how the IDF spokesperson and all their different social media channels and how the Israeli government uses social media as well, we know that if there were people on the Israeli side being brutalized and massacred, they would use those videos and pictures as propaganda themselves to portray out there as look what's happening within Israel. But we don't see that. Again, we just see people's, brunches being ruined and, spending a few minutes, maybe hours distraught that, that they're scared. Again, it's unfortunate, but not the same as what we see on the other side. With the Palestinian people, what we see in Gaza is we see photos and videos of buildings completely in rubble, just shambles, nothing left. The people in those buildings being pulled from the wreckage, many dead, some alive miraculously after hours under there. I believe the death toll in Gaza is something like 200 plus people, correct?
I believe it's around 230, 65 being children.
Right. In 11 days, 230 people, 65 children dead. We've heard stories of families completely decimated. All the children, all, women just killed. All that's left is one person, two people in an immediate family. It's just not equivalent at all. And I don't know how you look at that and say that the country that's causing that is the one on the defensive. It just does not make sense.
I'll give you a great example. Just yesterday, we had a live session with an organizer from Gaza, and towards the end of the live session, all we see is his camera shake and a loud boom. This is a dude around our age, a young man sitting in his home, just sitting on Instagram live, just talking about what's going on in his home, and out of nowhere, in his neighborhood, we just hear a bomb drop, and we see the earth shake. We see everything, and I think it's important. I think it's great. I'm happy that we have the ability and that the people of Gaza are able to share what's going on in their areas. We've seen the way these bombs rain down. These videos were going viral. These bombs, when there's a way, and I feel that specifically here in America, a lot of us might be desensitized to what's going on around the world. Like when we hear the word bomb, it's like, oh, it's a bomb. But when we're watching these videos of these bombs raining down, destroying apartment buildings, destroying office buildings, destroying homes, destroying mosques, destroying schools, we see what these people are going through. And it's very easy to understand. Like when we talk about self-defense, self-defense is protecting yourself. Self-defense isn't harming other people. Self-defense isn't killing children.
Right.
Self-defense isn't killing people. You
Right.
know, and that's the truth. And when we talk about self-defense, Israel is not capable of self-defense ever, because Israel is in a constant cycle of harming and violating Palestinian people. Israel is constantly oppressing Palestinian people. Palestinians have to deal every single day. Palestinians in the West Bank are dealing with checkpoints, are dealing with seeing armed Israeli soldiers. That's violence. Every day, Palestinians have to deal with this stuff. And, that's not even talking about the Palestinians who are kidnapped in the middle of the night by Israeli forces. That's not talking about the Palestinian children who are kidnapped by Israeli forces. So Palestinians are constantly in a state of being harmed and being violated by the Israeli government. And when we say that Israel is defending itself, Israel can't defend itself because it is always the aggressor.
Right.
It is always the oppressor. It
Right.
is always harming Palestinian people as the settler colonial state, as the apartheid state.
Right.
And so this idea of Israel is defending itself, Israel can't defend itself because it is always the aggressor.
Right. And I just don't understand how, like, going off what you said too, I just don't understand how you can say that a military action from a state is a defense against a people who don't even have a military. Like, this is where they're going to bring up this is the next thing you always hear, the next talking point. What about Hamas? And we're going to get more into that in just 1 second. But I mean, let's just go off the idea that, okay, Hamas sets off rockets towards Israel. Israel has their Iron Dome that, gets most of those rockets before they even hit land in Israel. But, even when Hamas does that, Israel's right to defend itself isn't even like, it's stupid to do this anyway as a state, but it's not even tit for tat. It's literally like, it's not even like, oh, you punch me, I punch you. It's literally like, you punch me and I fucking take out a machine gun and just unload on you. It's like not at all the equivalent. And it's just, and let's go into this one. What about Hamas? I mean, first of all, and I'm sure you could attest to this and go more into detail with this. I mean, the reason Hamas is there in the first place is thanks to Israel.
I definitely think that it's disgusting to talk about the result of ethnic cleansing and settler colonialism. Hamas was founded in the 80s. Israel has been killing Palestinians since the 40s. Palestinians have been Palestinian groups were founded as a result of the ethnic cleansing and the settler colonialism. Palestinian groups didn't need to exist. Israel forced them to. Israel, at the end of the day, if Israel was not occupying and hurting Palestinian people, we would not be seeing groups like this emerge. And if we want to get to the root cause of all the problems that are going on across historic Palestine, it is the apartheid state of Israel that is causing them. And when we talk about groups, no matter who they are in Gaza, it's important to understand that there is a civilian death toll in Gaza that is unjustifiable, and if you justify that, there are problems with you.
Right.
And that's all I could say. If you can justify one of those kids being killed, you have problems.
Right. I mean,
if you could justify anyone being killed by the Israeli military, there are problems.
Right. Well, what do you expect someone to do when in a single moment their entire family is wiped out and they're receiving no support, no aid, no assurance from the international community that, hey, this isn't going to, your family's not just going to be killed, and then nothing happens to make sure this doesn't happen again. What do you expect someone to do when they're seeking some sort of justice for their dead relatives and no justice is on the way? Of course, someone is going to become, looking for some sort of revenge or retribution and then join whatever group they feel like it's necessary to join to then do something. about it. I mean, I don't know what people expect from it. And also, I mean, if Israel didn't have Hamas, I mean, they would just create another one, another like scapegoat. I mean, they did create. I mean, they are the reason Hamas is Hamas to begin with. I'm not just talking about. I'm not just talking about. Oh, like when you radicalize people by doing this action, these actions. They join groups or whatever. No, I mean literally Israel made sure that Hamas was the one that rose to power. I mean, it's they wanted Hamas there so they could have this scapegoat. So, oh, I'm sorry. I needed a drink. Sorry about that. So let's now go to. We talked about before. You mentioned the human shields thing before, and that's good. So here's one. Also, another thing about the human shields. Whenever someone brings up, Hamas uses people as human shields. I mean, you mentioned how Israel has the technology to if they could call and say, "Hey, we're going to target this spot, evacuate." They have the technology to make sure they don't hit civilians. I also think that, I mean, if you were going to fight back in some form from Gaza, literally, where do you go to do that? That there aren't civilians. It's one of the most densely packed places in the entire world. You said before it's only like what 20 miles long.
It's a very small area of land. Like literally like you
Like
could go up and down for fun.
people have to understand. Like there is no battlefield. Like we're not talking about like a war scenario where there's person who signed up to fight, person who signed up to fight, and they're on like some battlefield where there's no civilians. There is nothing like that. So just by essence of fighting back, you are going to be around civilians. Like they're not. It's just that simple.
I think also like when it comes down to it, and the people of Gaza will say this as well. It's more of a collective punishment when they decide to bomb Gaza. When they're bombing office buildings, like office buildings, apartment buildings, there are hundreds of people who live there, hundreds of people who live there, and they'll say, oh, we called. You called someone to tell them you're destroying their home and their livelihood. Like, what are they supposed to take with them? Like we all know when there's a fire, you're not supposed to take stuff with you. What about when a bomb's about to hit?
Right.
So you're destroying these people's livelihoods. You're taking away their futures. You're making them homeless. And I have it's the truth. I have friends who have family members who are now homeless because of this. You
Right.
know, and over 90,000 people are now homeless, are displaced in Gaza. And Gaza is a city of refugees. It's an area of refugees. All these people were forced there in 1948.
Right. And they
So
can't.
Israel forced them there, and now they're destroying them.
And there's nowhere for them to go either. The idea that they can go somewhere. Again, we're talking densely packed place, 20 miles, but
And what's even more important to note is Gaza is under siege. It is being
right,
blockaded.
right,
The borders are controlled by two different countries, by Egypt and by Egypt and Israel, and they are forcing them in there. Like people can't easily get out.
right,
People can't leave. Goods can't come in. The water is undrinkable, and materials to rebuild don't get in.
right.
Like right now, when we're talking about what's
Highest
going on, it's going to take them years to fix this.
right, highest unemployment in the world, I believe.
Mhm.
And
Exactly, and the mental health rates
right,
are horrible over there.
right. It's an open air prison. Like they literally are stuck there. They don't have an airport. There's no
Mhm.
ports. There's nowhere to go. And if they do want to leave, like you said, there are two countries that control whether they can. And they don't let them leave very often. Now another thing is you brought up it's an apartheid state, and I agree. But many people will say, "Oh no, this isn't like no," because they let's dispel that right now. Let's talk about it. Tell us why this is an apartheid.
So I just like to preface this by saying this isn't just my opinion.
Mm.
This is the opinion of the Israeli organization B'Tselem, who came out earlier this year and declared that Israel is an apartheid state. And it is also the opinion of Human Rights Watch, who just dropped a fantastic report on how Israel is an apartheid state. Um, and these are some major organizations that have credibility not only in Israel but around the world, that are saying that Israel's policies are apartheid type policies. Not only am I saying this, but leaders from South Africa, a country that is known for fighting back against their settler colonialism and fighting back against their apartheid system, uh, have openly called Israel a an apartheid state, and Israel itself doesn't hide from it. Israel has laws that promote the well-being and promote their Jewish population. Their Jewish population is number one. Israel is called a Jewish state, and we see this all over historic Palestine. In the West Bank, we see Israeli only roads. We see Israeli only areas, Israeli only restaurants. Even their settlements don't allow Palestinians in. Palestinians aren't allowed to go into settlements. Um, Israel as a country has been functioning as an apartheid state
Right.
for years now. And I'm personally glad that we're seeing more and more people speak out against it. And now we have even gotten members of Congress who are openly calling it an apartheid state based on their policies, based on the ways that they treat Palestinian people.
Right, and to really drive home too that this is, what an apartheid is. I mean, Waleed from Justice Democrats wrote a Twitter thread. I believe it was earlier today or yesterday, and I was reading through it. When he was a college student, he says he was part of. He's an American, and he went over to was doing a study abroad in Jordan, and he went to Jerusalem with some friends, and he was the only non-white of his friends to go. And they all got through the Israeli, security checkpoint, easy peasy. He, because of his dark skin, because I believe he said he's of Pakistani background, he was taken to a separate line, ordered to a separate line, literally based off of him looking, because they
The
don't
skin
know it.
color.
Yeah, they don't know at this point him looking like an Arab, and they force him to go to another line, and then they hold him in a room for hours, demanding to know why he is there, interrogating him, checking through his stuff. His friends, he said, when he finally was let go, they were worried because they stood in the line for minutes, got through, and were waiting for him for hours. I mean, this isn't this. I don't know how else you do. And this is the experience of an American who goes there. I mean, I think that's really should be eye opening to people, that this isn't like, maybe they're looking at someone's, they look at someone's passport or their ID and they see they're from a certain area and they're asking them questions. But this is someone who's got no ties to that area at all, and boom, this happens to him. I mean, I know it shouldn't matter, but I think people listening, it might hit a little bit stronger if to hear this happening to just an American there with his college buddies. So I know before we went live, you said you could go into the history with like a 10-word summary of going back decades. And I said I didn't want you to do that. But I do think actually, being that we talked for so long about everything else, I don't think this history should be just like, put at the end here for people to miss at the end of a show. So I think, maybe you could come back and tell us a bigger, a more broader summary, and we could really dive into it for a whole episode maybe. But
I'm down.
but
I'm
let's
down.
but to end it here, let's do this. You don't have to actually do 10 words, but let's do a short summary of basically, how we got here and what's next going forward.
I think definitely when we talk about Israel, the most important thing to understand is that what is going on between Israel and the Palestinians is not a conflict. It is settler colonialism. Israel is a country that has been founded on the ethnic cleansing, on the murder, on the and on the oppression of Palestinians. Since 1948, since the 1940s, I should say, they have been stealing Palestinian land, killing Palestinian people, and expelling Palestinians from their rightful homeland. Like I said, Palestinian refugees are all over the world nowadays. Um, and since 1948, since the founding of Israel, they have been a settler colonial state. That's their founding. So when we think about Israel, it's important to understand they're a settler colonial state that has turned into an apartheid state based on their policies, based on the fact that they were not able to kick out all the Palestinians, based on the fact that the Palestinians stayed strong and the Palestinians stood tall for what they believe in for their homeland. And that's why we have Palestinians all over historic Palestine right now who refuse to stand down to Israeli oppression, and have been some of the most resilient people in the world in this time. And the Palestinian people is and the story of the Palestinian people is not a sad story. It's a story of hope. It's a story of resilience, and it's the story of one day going back home.
Thank you. Oh, actually, one more thing before we go any further. Your organization that you're with, American Muslims for Palestine. Why don't you briefly tell us, promote the work they've been doing and what you're currently, what's currently in the cards.
Of course. So I work with American Muslims for Palestine. We're a national organization that educates and advocates for the Palestinian cause here in America. We have chapters all over the country, from New Jersey all the way to California, and we work to mobilize here in America to make sure that people are doing their part to support the Palestinians. At the end of the day, as people who live here in America, as American citizens, we cannot allow our country to be complicit in the crimes of Israel. We can no longer allow this. Um, and at AMP, we have a lot of exciting projects coming up in the coming days and in the coming week. I'd recommend for anyone who wants to stay in touch and see the work we're doing. Check us out on Instagram at AM Palestine, on Twitter at AM Palestine, and on Facebook AM Palestine. Our website is ampalestine.org. Check us out. We do a lot of great work, a lot of great advocacy work. We have boycott campaigns. We do a lot of amazing stuff, and we definitely need all the support possible. And Matt, definitely looking forward to doing a part two and having this conversation.
Mohamad Habehh, National Development Coordinator for American Muslims for Palestine. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Really, I think you really helped break this down for people, and I think it was really great talking with you.
Nice talking to you as well.
Have a great night.
You as well.
Where is the? Here we go. Boop boop. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was very interesting. I think he broke it down really. He was really good at explaining it in a way to make people who may not understand everything that's going on, because this is a long, and we'll get more into that. I'll definitely have him on so we could go further into the history of it, of the area. But I mean, I thought he did a really great job at breaking it down in an easily to understand way, because it's like Michael Brooks said in that speech of his that went viral. It's not complicated, but I think there is a lot for people to. It's not complicated what's going on, but I think the history of what's going on there, there's a lot for people to take in because this has been going on for so long. This has been happening. This what people saw. I feel like people are shocked at what happened to the Palestinian people this past week or two, and it's not shocking if you know the history. Why it's going on and the specifics of everything, it's not complicated at all. Um, there's someone who I wanted to get a hold of. One second. Hello.
Hey, how you doing, Matt?
Hey, is this who what do you want to go by? I don't want to say anything if you don't want to go by any.
Let's go by, I don't know, Charlie.
Okay, Charlie. How you doing, Charlie?
Hanging in there yourself?
I'm doing good. I really appreciate you taking this call right now. For everyone who's watching the show, surprise, a little unexpected bonus for you all. This is also for the free show listeners. This will be on the main podcast. You're getting two guests right now. We just got off the phone with Mohamad Habehh from the American Muslims for Palestine. And right now, I'm talking to Charlie. And I wanted Charlie to call in because we spoke, was it last week? I think it was last week on the Majority Report as a caller. And he told us some details that I really wanted to share with you guys here on this show. And also, talk to you as a guest and not someone just calling in. Because, when I welcome you to the show, I roll out the red carpet. So, Charlie,
I appreciate it.
I really appreciate you taking the time tonight. So, for people who have no idea why you're on the line here, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and the sort of, I guess, the gist of what you told me about the last time you called into the Majority Report?
Sure. So, I mean, I'm an Orthodox Jew, and the purpose of my call is, I guess what surprised you is that I'm an Orthodox Jew who also, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I mean, I voted for Bernie in the primary and voted for Biden. I'm one of only one other Orthodox Jew I know who voted for Biden. So it was a bit interesting. I guess it was a little bit unusual to have that, and I called because of my not pro-Israel stance,
Right.
to kind of speak about that last time. So
Right.
I guess that's what prompted this.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because I mean, you got down to, I think, a lot about why, and you told us some fascinating stories about, in the Orthodox Jewish community, how people feel about, Israel Palestine, and why they feel that way. Can you go a little bit into that?
Sure. I think the easiest way to kind of like talk about it is just like, listen, the way I would describe it is this. I mean, I don't think it's any secret to world history that Jews overall, particularly Orthodox Jews, have been among the most persecuted people in I guess, world history over the course of millennia. And in modern times, like we've built up, through all those years and hundreds of years and years of persecution after the Holocaust, coming to the U.S., the founding of Israel, like that means it's so much, I guess, as a concept to Orthodox Jews specifically, because we do have the concept of the Messiah and all those things. So that founding of Israel and the whole, ever since then, there is kind of that feeling from the Holocaust onward that we're in those times, right? Like a lot of people truly believe that it's there, it's right on the corner, it's right around the corner. And because we were finally given that, our ancestral homeland, quote unquote, that feeling that it's hard to describe. Like I've been to Israel briefly, and I mean, I remember going to the different holy sites and crying at the Western Wall and the Kotel Hamaravi. I still would if I went today, because those things still mean so much to us as Jews, and that's kind of impossible to separate from the conflict as it is both now and over the past 70 years or so. So I'm trying to like not ramble, but at the same time can make it sort of concise. But yeah, sorry. Yeah,
No, no.
that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
Right, right. Do you have your blinkers on? Because we hear that's.
Yeah. Sorry.
No,
Sorry about that.
it's all. No, I appreciate you taking the time, even though you're in your car. That's and when you called in, and I'm glad you gave that background because we hear, I want people should see that you are here. You obviously you are You are a man of faith, and you are, you really are an Orthodox Jew. I think people understand that. But you had some really interesting thoughts on, you are someone who came out and said, this is not right. What's going on with how Israel is treating the people of Palestine, the Palestinians.
Right.
Um, what made you come to those feelings? Because I think it's important to, if someone with your background can come out now and feel this way, I think it's important for people to see what is it that affected you in that way, because obviously it's something people can understand and learn from, and maybe help other people understand as well.
It's honestly, I mean, it was a long process, and it's not one that happens overnight, honestly. I mean, up until really the 2016 election, I wasn't even that interested or cared that much about politics. I was conservative pretty much up until that point, for the most part. And I would say that this is, I guess, my personal experience, and I think that you can extrapolate from it somewhat. Part of what made me changed my views is that people I respected for other reasons, their knowledge in other aspects of things that I appreciated and enjoyed, were able to kind of, if someone you respect for their intellectual abilities, their knowledge in various subjects, feels a certain way about a topic, and you respect their opinion, then if a person is somewhat intellectually curious or doesn't think that, oh, this person's just crazy, right? Like, there's a reason why they think that way, and that engages you in those conversations. I was actually extremely defensive of Israel for a very long time, and I would say even until past few years. It's a slow burn, right? It builds and builds and builds, because when you respect people and they're talking about these things, and there's obviously a reason they have these views and these opinions. I think even the last, I wouldn't say it was a conflict, when they were going towards the fence, when there was that march to the fence, the border fence.
Right.
I think it's even still having arguments with a friend of mine who I respect immensely, about things, saying like, well, what about this situation and that situation? And it's really that slow burn. And that's kind of why, like, just to make one point, like, just to give an example, when Bernie went on Joe Rogan, right? Like, he exposed a lot of people to ideas that never would have been exposed to those ideas. And it was done in a way with there are 100 million people or whatever that listen to Joe Rogan. So when Joe Rogan hosts someone like Bernie Sanders, and he's sitting there going, yeah, and those people are exposed to those ideas. I think that's kind of what happened to me over the course of years about, I guess, this topic, but over the course of many topics. I think that's how I got to where I am today, where it's just people I respected took the time to actually explain these topics and issues to me and teach me.
Right. And when we last spoke, you shared some, and you don't have to give specifics as to who
Sure.
shared these feelings with you or anything, but you
Mm-hmm.
had some insights from the obviously the broader Orthodox Jewish community, i.e., apparently people who just aren't you, and and you also shared some thoughts as someone who knows where they're coming from and is no longer there, about why they feel that way. Can you go a little bit into that?
Of course. It's like I said, we've been persecuted forever, and we kind of still are. I mean, anti-Semitism is not exactly gone.
Right.
And even unfortunately, people hijack the movement for human rights for Palestinians. They hijack that and use it as an excuse to be anti-Semitic. And
All right, we saw that with, there were a bunch of white supremacists
yeah,
here in the United States who went viral with a video where they were driving by with a Palestinian flag. These are white supremacists. They don't give a shit about the Palestinian people, but they had a Palestinian flag, and they drove by like a pro-Israel rally, and they started chanting out, things about Hitler and things like that. I mean, really, I don't know how you could. I mean, I hope people saw that for what it was, because clearly it was an attack on both Jewish people and Palestinian people, because they want people to think that Palestinian people were sharing those thoughts by waving the Palestinian flag.
Right. Now, I actually remember having a conversation with the only other Orthodox Jew who's a Democrat that I know. We had that conversation, and we actually talked about that particular instance as well. How we were talking about, like, oh, like he said this. He initially sent me that video showing this, and then I think we found the article later, like, oh, well, can't believe everything you see.
Right.
Uh, he's more to the he's still more supportive of Israel in general than I would say I am, but our conversations are actually really, really in good faith, and we do really discuss these in a proper level. But I guess to get back to the other topic, um, we're super defensive. I don't know how else to put it. And I think reasonably so, based on our history. We really need to be.
I mean,
So many
I think actually, being on the defensive is the perfect way to explain it. Being that one of the most often heard talking points as to to defend what happens over in Gaza, especially what you heard these past few weeks, is that Israel has a right to defend itself. So I think honestly, I think that is in good faith and in bad faith, that seems to be the way that it's gone about.
Yeah, and it's pretty, for me, it's easy to see why, because of the fact that I grew up in this, and Israel really is, in our view and our world, a true safe haven for Jews. I mean, I really don't know how else to put it, because it is a beacon of hope for us, that even if the US goes nuts and we have to leave, we can go to, like, obviously that ignores the geopolitics and the fact that the only reason that Israel is able to do the things that they do in general is to have full support of the US government. But I digress. But people just think, like, yeah, Israel is like, if we ever need to go anywhere, like, we can go. And people from other countries, if things get bad for whatever reason, we can always go to Israel. There's always a
Is that
home for us there,
Is that
you know?
is that like a mainly an Orthodox Jewish like thought? Because I mean, I've been around many Jews in my life. Half my family is Jewish on my father's side. And I've never heard them ever. My father too, who I've never heard them ever bring up Israel as anything at all, honestly, in that sense. And they're not Orthodox, obviously. But
Right.
that doesn't seem to be. So I just want to, like, for people to understand where that thought comes from. Because I that as for, like, non-Orthodox Jewish people, I guess the less conservative sects of Judaism.
Mhm.
I don't know how it's called. I'm sorry.
No,
Um, but
um,
they don't seem to really consider Israel in that way at all.
yeah, and I would say it's definitely, at least in my experience, of course. But there's that. I'm sure there are people who are not necessarily, who are not Orthodox or practicing, who that do have, I guess, an affinity or an appreciation for Israel. But we're taught from birth, essentially, that Eretz Yisrael is our homeland. It is our homeland, and eventually, when Mashiach, or the Messiah, comes, like, that's going to be our homeland again. We will go back. And the interesting thing about it is that technically it's not technically, it is a secular government. They're not a religious government, and that's kind of what I always find fascinating, is that Netanyahu is not remotely religious as a person, but he'll sit there and go that Israel is our homeland because of the fact that it was promised to us essentially by God. But at the same time, you don't really believe in God, nor do you give a shit about the Torah. So why are you using that as your excuse for why? Like, if you want to make the claim that we were there first, quote unquote, fine. But at the same time, you can't use the Torah to back up your claim if you don't give a shit about the Torah.
Now I have
So
to ask you that, because is this something that's more broadly held too among Orthodox Jewish people who are obviously very religious, so they would look at someone as like Netanyahu as not being so religious, or do they not, or is that something coming from you as someone who is moving further and further to the left while still being an Orthodox Jew?
I think it's I think it's definitely more people who are, Gus, more aware. A lot of Orthodox Jews are fully aware that Netanyahu doesn't give a damn about the Orthodox community. And in fact, Israel has made it somewhat difficult to be Orthodox in Israel, somewhat in certain aspects. Like a lot of them don't want to serve in the military, and there's a big push to force the Orthodox community to serve in the military, even if they don't want to. They're not doing it because they're conscientious. They're not doing it because they don't want to, harm Palestinians necessarily, although I'm sure there are people like that, but they don't want to serve in the military. So I think it's a mix, although most people don't think too deeply into that. I think the thing about Orthodox Jews is that a lot of them also don't believe that the current state of Israel should be allowed, specifically the Hasidic communities, because their view is that until the Messiah comes, we're not really allowed to be there with our own government. So it's also, there's that interesting split in the community itself, and
Is
that kind of also points to how diverse the Orthodox community is itself.
are those the and I know I've read about them before, but their name is going by me, and this could be something completely different. I'm not sure. But there is a pretty well
The
known,
Neturei Karta. The Neturei Karta.
you know who I'm talking about, the people who always
Yep.
show up for the Palestinian
Yeah.
to support Palestinians, especially in like New York City. You see them where you see these Orthodox Jews, full like traditional Orthodox Jewish garb, and they're holding Palestinian flags, and it's like, for people who don't know those people exist, it's like, holy shit, this is crazy to see.
So it's interesting. The Neturei Karta, this is my impression of them. I actually don't necessarily know too much about them. I think they're not necessarily, as far, again, this is just my observation. I may be wrong, so please don't hold me to it. My understanding is that it's not that they're necessarily pro-Palestine, although that is a part of it because of the situation. Their issue is they're an extreme version of the Israel is not supposed to exist as a state until the Messiah comes. So this is the extremist, I guess, quote unquote, version of that, where their support of Palestine, it's kind of like the evangelical support for a Jewish state in Israel, where it's like we need them there so that the rapture can happen, I believe, or something like that, or so that
Right.
the end of times can come. I think it's kind of like that, where it's like, no, we can't have a state of Israel, therefore support Palestine, not we're supporting Palestine because of the human rights violations. That kind of situation. Most people in that Hasidic community are opposed to the state of Israel in a idealistic sense, as opposed to a we don't want there to exist one. It's more just like we don't support it because we don't think it should exist. However, obviously there are fellow Jews and therefore support.
Right. Now, have you shared your feelings on all this with people in your community, or has this
Nope.
been no? You don't feel like
No.
that's something you could do, right?
Oh, not
Um,
even. No. That would honestly that would be bad, really bad.
that's
God,
unfortunate
God,
that's yeah, but I mean, I guess when we talk about the tide turning and the walls cracking, there's obviously still communities out there where that's not the case at all, not even close. But I would say you are a good example of maybe that first chip in the wall there. You know what I mean? That's someone is better than no one, and you said that you had someone you talked to too. So who knows where they'll be in some time. But when you called into the majority report last time, you also shared what I thought was fascinating, how people how they basically came around to voting for Trump, even when deciding that he is someone who is racist and probably not at all someone who has the care of the Jewish people in his heart and mind. Can you go a little bit into that? Because I think that was also very interesting for people to understand, where this whole situation as well.
I mean, I guess that I can easily sum it up by just pointing out to how Ben Shapiro reacted to Ann Coulter as being a pretty obvious anti-Semite, but supporting Israel, and him saying, like, I don't really care what she says as long as she supports Israel. So it's kind of like that. so many Orthodox Jews will support whoever is the most vocal supporter of Israel, because that's the easiest way to indicate that you are pro-Jewish. And the Republicans have done a great job of I guess, I keep, like, I would say like this, right? And I've had this conversation. I haven't had this conversation. I'm sorry. A lot of the the channels that I watch on YouTube, like, they talk about how people don't realize that the reason why some people refuse to vote for Republicans, despite the fact that if you actually talk to them about their personal views with regard to, conservative things, religion, and gay marriage and stuff like that, they're actually relatively conservative in minority communities. But the reason why they vote Democrat is because the Republicans are so stupid, like blatantly racist, that they just won't vote for them. And I think that it's kind of the same situation with Orthodox Jews, where they are conservative. Like, they're all conservative. It's very hard to be religious and not fall in the conservative viewpoint for most things. So they're going to vote for the people who are most openly supporting Israel, which is like, hey, they're supporting Israel, therefore they're supporting Jews. And also that a lot of the things that the Republican Party espouses as a religious community and an Orthodox community, they're very conservative as well. So they fall in line with those as well. So the more subtle things, the harder to understand types of anti-Semitism, I guess, or things like that, is going to kind of be easy to brush away compared to that stuff.
Right. Charlie, I really appreciate you calling in like this at the you were in your car and I reached out to you online and I asked you if you had some time and you took the time. I really appreciate not only you calling in, but also, I know you can't, speak out to, and it's because it would, obviously it would probably, like you said, be really bad for you. But I mean, I just want you to know that, as someone who, when first heard your call when you called in, like I thought what you had to share with us was really powerful in the sense that, you know, if other people are listening to this and know that the situation is to the point where even someone with your background can look and say what's going on over there to the Palestinian people isn't right, and Israel is wrong here, then I mean I think they're I'm someone who likes to look in the optimism and the hope wherever it may be, and I thought your story you know was very hopeful, to be quite frank. And so I'm thankful that you were able to take the time and talk with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm happy to called in. I appreciate it, and hopefully something changes for the better with the situation. I don't expect it to, because I just don't. I don't. I expect things to get a little bit more hardline, but without hope, there's really not much.
Right. Thanks a lot. I really have a great night.
Thank you. You too. I appreciate it.
Take care.
All right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to have that conversation on this show as well, because when he called into the majority, but we went a little bit further into some things. But I thought it was, I think it's important that people like that, even if they can't speak out to their own community, just to, yeah, even if you have to do it anonymously, I totally get all that stuff. I know it's hard for sure, if your whole life is in there, and like, he who knows what could happen if he, with his family, and who knows if he has um but I think it's a strong indicator of just how much Israel has gone too far, to the point, like, it's just like you can't do this. You just can't. People are not going to. Maybe back in the day you could do this, but people today, the new generations, the young generations, um, you know, millennials, Gen Z, they're not okay with this. And I think honestly, you see it a lot of older people too. I think I'm being too simplistic here, actually, with saying that. But I think the tide is really changing. If you have someone like that, And, he's just talking to his direct community. Who knows what's being chipped away at in other religious communities in the Jewish faith? People questioning certain things. I mean, I'm not expecting everyone to be able to, come out and have the conversation I had with Mohammed at the first half of the show. But if they can listen to that and say, hey, wait a second, and question some things, I mean, that's important. He doesn't, like, people like Charlie don't need to be completely turned around. Like, they don't need to, like, he doesn't need to, like, all of a sudden renounce, like, come out and be like, not worry about his community or his family, like, cutting ties with him. Like, he isn't, like, that. We don't need to get to that point, like, for everybody. But the fact that someone like him is where he is, I think that's a huge step in where we are. Folks, to support this show, go to patreon.com/MattBinder. We're going to go to the second half of the show. Patreon.com/MattBinder. Every time we gain some patrons, we lose some patrons. It's amazing. I'm always stuck in the same area. We get stuck in a number, and that's where we are. I believe I'm coming at you guys with the same number of patrons as I had last week. But we had a handful of new people join. I gain some new ones, I lose some people. And everyone who I lose tells me via the exit surveys, and I hope they're being truthful, because that would suck if they're not. Well, that would suck for me if they're not. But they always say, like, I really enjoyed the show. I'm so sorry I have to leave. I hope to be back soon. I'm having some financial difficulty. And though that's the most legitimate reason I could possibly hear for you to leave the show. Please do so if you need to take care of yourself and your family first and foremost, without a doubt, no question about it. So don't become a patron if you can't afford to do so. But if you can, please help this show grow. I don't want to get too specific here, but we are, like, literally, like, and this isn't, this might sound far to some people, but to me it's pretty amazing to see us here. We're like a little less than a quarter of the way to where the patrons would be able to enable me to do this as a full-time schedule. I mean, I still wouldn't be able to leave my full-time job. We'd be close to it, but that level of patronage would enable me to cut out other things that I do to make money, because I'd be able to do this show full-time. Close to full-time. So patreon.com/MattBinder. That would mean more shows, more content, more guests. I'm not even someone who would just get all those patrons and be like, hell yeah, this is I'm gonna sit back with all this Patreon money. I'd actually I'd probably, the first thing I would do is I'd probably hire someone to do another show with me, so I'd be able to have more content coming out for you guys. Like, I'd probably get another host to do a secondary show with me. And if that worked and that grew, I would even do a third one and a fourth one, et cetera, et cetera. This is just, giving you ideas of what I would be able to do. I wouldn't just sit there and, count my patron money and go, ha, 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 ha. So patreon.com/MattBinder. And I would like to thank the patrons who have supported this show. Well, first, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to name drop some random patrons who've been with this show for a very long time. For example, the first person I would like to thank for being a patron for this show is, oh my God, the patron page isn't long. Okay, so here's some people I'd like to thank. In no order whatsoever, they've just been longtime patrons. Dave K, Christine H, Dragon Slayer, NS, Daniel S, Champagne Communist, Max W, User Me, Michael J, Benji A, Fraz K, Mr. Danks, Bobby M, Colin R, Tom M, Katie S, Namde Net, TM, Free Hat, Jack C, Michael B, Odeth, Janelle A, Jasmine H, Tamney G, Abigail T. Thank you all so much for being patrons for as long as you guys have. I could not do this show without you. I appreciate your patronage so much. I truly do. Literally, I don't know what the show would not be where it is without you guys. And now I would like to thank the people who just became patrons. My latest patrons since the last show. Where is this? Let's go to the join date here on the good old patron page. And since the last show, we've been joined by Amanda B, Rachel K, Peter, Nick P, and joining the show as a patron right now during the broadcast is Mojo Mine. Thank you so much, Mojo Mine, Nick, Peter, Rachel, and Amanda for becoming patrons. I really appreciate the support. And you could also support this show if you can't afford to become a patron. Totally understand. You support this show by subscribing to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/MattBinder. If you're already subscribed to the YouTube channel, then go to twitch.tv/MattBinder and follow me on there. If you've already done that, then go to ratethispodcast.com/doomed. Go there and links will come up to where you can provide reviews for this show, such as Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Castbox. Those are all review platforms. Leave a review on anywhere that you haven't already. Start with Apple Podcasts, the most important. We are at something like 307 reviews. I have seen it in the charts. Every time a new review comes in, I have an analytics system that tracks the charts. We move up in the charts. It's just a proven thing. Easiest thing you can do, whether you can support the show monetarily or not, ratethispodcast.com/doomed. Leave a review. Helps out the show tremendously and doesn't cost you a dime. You can also support this show by going to the Spotify. Open the Spotify. I sound like a boomer over here. No offense to my boomers. But you can go to Spotify, open up the app, type in Doom with Matt Binder, go to it, and click follow. Unfortunately, you can't leave a review on Spotify, but Spotify looks at the followers in a very similar way. More followers I have on Spotify, the higher up the show goes. So even if you've done all those things, go to Spotify, do that. Do all these things if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitter at Matt Binder. Follow me on Instagram at Matt Binder. Wherever you're on social media, type in Matt Binder, follow me there. Easy peasy, easiest things in the world to do. And what else? I got the newsletter that I've said I was going to relaunch, still haven't, but I actually have pieces I'm working on for it. So it's not like I've been saying it hasn't been happening. I just haven't finished these pieces. Some of them I think are pretty might hit because they're pretty interesting. And I mean they're going to be hits. I mean, I think they're going to be like I think there's some original stuff there that people aren't aware of. They will be released soon, so if you're not already subscribed, go to MISINFO. That's short for misinformation. That's right. misinfo.com and subscribe to the newsletter. That's misinfo.com. What else? I always forget. Oh, if you're in the YouTube chat, I'm going to the second half of the show. You can drop a YouTube chat, and I will read your question or comment. I'll try to get to some random ones, but if you send a YouTube chat, I will 100% read your question or comment. YouTube chat's also a really good way to give a one-off donation if you're someone who doesn't feel financially secure enough yet to to be able to subscribe to a monthly fee, but you still feel like, you got a couple bucks laying around right now, so you want to give a one off, it's a great way to do it by dropping a YouTube chat. That way you get something in return too. You got me to read your comment or question. What else? What else? What else? What else? What else? I've actually been gotten some emails recently. It's been a real uptick in upcoming platforms asking me to join their platforms. I need to have some calls. I'll let you guys know. And again, that's happening because you guys are helping this show grow. So um, if I'll let you guys know if there's more platforms that you guys can support this show on. Because I'm someone who feels like I'm going to give you guys as many opportunities as possible to pick your platform of choice. I'm not going to funnel you to one. If you like YouTube better than Twitch, or you make your pick. What else? We're going to go to the second half of the show now. If you're watching live, you could stick around. I don't cut you guys off. You can stay tuned for the live broadcast of the second half. We got some really fun video for the second half of the show. And just give me a second here to get a drink, and I will be right back in a second. The show is not over if you're watching live or if you're a patron. I'll be back in a minute. Or if you're listening to the podcast, doomedcast.com, also doomedpod.com, goes to the same place. There's nothing wrong with the doomedpod domain, though. I didn't forget to renew it. Just for some reason, something happened with the name server, and it's not. But doomedcast.com is definitely working right now. Go to doomedcast.com for the podcast version of the show. Everyone else, stick around. Freebies and non-live viewers, I will see you all next time on Doomed. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. 1 second, let me put my headphones back on. I needed to go run and grab a drink. That's why it took me a little bit longer than usual. Let me also take a second here to set up this video, because the last video I played last week was this Michael video, which is amazing. Really, really good. I'll put this up for now. Cool. So everything's set up for the second half of the show. I'm going to log into the caller system. You can call into the show by going to Doomed Live. Doomed Live. 1 second here. Yeah, just open up Skype and type in Doomed Live. I think the actual username will come up as Doomed Live _1. I hate that. I don't know why they chose that when I chose Doomed Live. But that should, if you just type in Doomed Live, it should come up. You can call into the show. I'll take your call. Let's see. I've had a little bit of a cold. You might be able to hear in my voice. We got a call from Renee. 1 second, Renee. Let me just pull you up here. Give me 1 more second. Hello, Renee. How are you doing today?
Great. Chile locally, so to keep it short and sweet. There's been a victory in the municipality elections that were recently the previous weekend. downtown Santiago has its first communist mayor because there's been over here sort of like an electoral like upheaval because the previous like successor of the liberal coalition split up. They sort of tried to make it like free up uh, the posts and like the electoral seats or nominations in order to compete between each other, and that resulted in a dissipation of this sort of like electoral pact between the liberal wings of both the center left, or what we would say the center left, but for instance, Montserrat would never call them the left. Um, and among these, that created a lack of confidence that even now the Socialist Party is thinking of splitting off, as the Communist Party already split off and is now integrated with this new coalition that I said about the upstarts that came from that's created these new political parties, which are like minor parties that are kind of like uh, form their own coalition that it's based on the previous like student protests and student
Give people a little bit of a
directives.
really quickly. Give people a little summary of, because I think you jumped right in. What are you talking about in terms of? I mean, I know what you're talking about, but tell people, what are you talking about?
Oh, basically that there's like a sort of like Chile. I mean, the cities in Chile, and if they're like a city as complicated as Santiago, like for instance, has like different neighborhoods, like different boroughs, communities, where each community municipality has like the not only a city council but its own mayor. So it's not like New York City where there's just one mayor, but every borough has its own mayor running things, shall we say.
Right.
So, for instance, the upheaval was that many, um, like for instance, uh, even though there were like some areas where the right um, conserved their like seats of power, there were others that were completely lost, and then there was like also like areas where the previous center left liberal coalition, I call liberal in the sense of like kind of like wishy-washy moderate, and also like a sort of favoring neoliberal policies. Um, those they conserve certain enclaves, but the other ones were lost to this new coalition between the communists and this new group of like the dissident left. Now, within the context of this, there's also that with the protests, like the estallido social, the kind of uprising that was like last year or the year before in 2019, there was kind of like a, a kind of like a rejection to traditional politics and the party system, and there was like some sort of like a unspoken like anarchist ideal of like well, both the use of black bloc and strategies like the creation of an autonomous zone, and sort of that the use of no political parties, and it was kind of like the Communist Party was ostracized. So to see them like coming back from that situation into gaining such an important seat, like the old the old city of Santiago, which is down in the downtown area, which borders on the other area that already had a communist mayor, who's now seeking to run for the presidency in the following election. Now, at the same time, there's this election was important because we're also, as I've been mentioning in the chat and what have you, regarding like the creation of this assembly in order to choose our new constitution, which was one of the battles that we won uh, due to the previous, like as I was saying, 2019, the whole uprising and all that.
Right.
So and from that, there's like a the center left coalition even lost even more power, and they've gained like a new like independent uh, position of candidates that weren't affiliated to any political party, despite that the traditional factions and all that allegedly had their own like independent candidates and all that. But even though within for instance, I guess like the communists with their coalition with the new party gained like around like 25. The old guard had like around like 10. The ecologists, the Green Party had like one, but this new like independent sector gained like 40 seats. And from that, there's like the Lista Pueblo, the people's list, the people, sort of like an independent section that's completely disillusioned. And I'm okay for within the assembly, like for creating this new constitution and demanding what's important and all that, for them to decide upon which policies and all that. But they're using a discourse where they're saying that they're breaking away completely from the left, and that the Communist Party lost like any relevancy and discourse since they made the pact with the center left, and that for instance, there was like a well beloved uh, shall we say a leader that was Gladys Marine, which was a woman who actually had like who spoke against like the like charities like we have like the Jerry Lewis telethon over here that kind of supports like it's kind of like up in the air like abstract supposedly like supporting people with paraplegics or people that are mutilated. It's kind of like up in the air, which is basically used as a sort of like of a tax break for charity and all that as you do. And she criticized it, and she was like an important figure. And she also had like another beloved figure, which was like from the dissident left, which was a gay writer, very well beloved here, and because he wrote like novellas about growing up poor and gay. He was like the Chilean response to Reinaldo Arenas, but with the difference of being like very much on the left. His name was Pedro Lemebel. And so, but what's kind of like up in the air, this is like a kind of like Game of Thrones aftermath of this, like people like trying to say that they're not going to hold the primaries. It's kind of like sort of like the Democratic Party, like in the wake of like 2016, with the DSA and like
Right.
different factions and all that.
Right. Well, Renee, thank you. Thanks for calling in and giving us that update.
And thanks for being very direct, probably, right? Not beating around the bush.
Yeah. Well, we know how you are, and we love you for it, Renee.
But
So
sometimes I surprise you though.
sometimes, not often, but sometimes, yes.
Yeah, I know. I have to change. Yeah.
Thanks for the call, Renee. I really appreciate it. I do appreciate you calling in with these updates from. I mean, usually it's things in Chile, but sometimes you're like the South American correspondent sometimes. So I really appreciate the.
Oh yeah, like regarding Colombia, though, hopefully it can be much more. But I mean, the guy in question was a bit more moderate than, and I sort of like
That's
talking him
fine.
from
Yeah,
the
it was
left
good.
and
It was
all
still a
that.
good
Yeah.
call. Yeah. Thanks, Renee.
Okay.
Take care. All right, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's get to some of these clips here. Well, first of all, actually, I wanted to talk about this for a little bit. Oh, well, let me read some IMs first because I saw we had a bunch of super chats. Oh, and this isn't a super chat, but I wanted to let Abby here know that I saw this. Abby, apparently people were talking about doomed stickers and doomed gear. I've been thinking about it. It's not too many of you guys who would probably want it, but I've been thinking about it. At least, and let me get further into it. Abby says, I increased my monthly donation because I got a new job. And then she also puts, where is this? Where is that? Here we go. That doomed gear with a smiley face with little stars in their eyes. I like that. Um, First of all, thank you so much. Second of all, I realize there are a few people who are giving more than the suggested donation of $5 a month. Um, and I will be throwing up new tiers. If you are just giving $5, you're not going to be missing anything that you currently get with those with the additional tiers. But I am thinking of doing additional tiers to thank you guys who do give more, and you'll get a little bit of bonus stuff. Um, there'll be doomed gear eventually, and if it's something that's like a sticker, I'll probably give it to some of the higher tiers for free. If it's something that costs a little bit more money, like a T-shirt or something, I'll probably be able to offer like a big discount for the higher tiers because obviously shirts cost money more than a sticker. Um, yeah, I'll let you guys know, and also we could do like special chats and everything. And also update on the this is going to be for all people who ever supported the Doomed Patreon page. There, I've been hinting over the past week or two that I'm going to do a video chat with you guys, just you guys. I had hinted that maybe it would be this upcoming weekend, the last show, but then as the weekend got closer, I realized this weekend is my daughter's birthday. It's actually Monday, but we're celebrating this weekend. She's gonna be 2 years old. So this weekend's probably not the good weekend to do it. I'm thinking next weekend. I will let you guys know on the patron page. And anyone who's ever been a patron will be welcome to this first one. And then going forward, we'll just do it for patrons. And then we'll do maybe additional stuff for higher tier patrons when that rolls out. I'll let all you patrons know. Let's get to some super chats here, and then we'll get to some stories. Then that's the show. Renee of the super chat. Oh, this was when the guest was on. I can't ask about that now. Sorry, Renee. Grim with a super chat. You can only believe in a two-state solution if you've never seen a map of contemporary Israel and amidst it, pockets of Palestine. Right. I don't know what the solution is over there, honestly. I don't advocate for. That's not my area of expertise. I don't know what will ever solve the situation there. And by solve the situation, I mean I don't know what we do. I don't know how we get the Palestinian people to be. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to do. It's a hard one in terms of what's the solution to make to allow the Palestinian people to live in peace. And I mean, Israel's there now, right? I mean, it's a lot of people there too. I mean, what do you? I don't know what you would do. And I see, all sorts of different opinions about the two-state solution and other. I mean, I don't know I don't know. That's somewhere where I'm not well versed, so I'm not going to tell you any. I don't know. Ella Funk, the super chat. Thanks for the thoughtful content and commentary, both here and on the Majority Report. Hope you can continue to lend a platform for important topics and voices. Thank you, Ella Funk. I appreciate that. Renee says, talk about Israel's official Twitter account. I did mention the idea of spokesperson, and I had the Twitter account in mind when I mentioned it. Jess, the Sonic Wave with a super chat. $5 for a bud. Can't watch the live show tonight. Gotta catch it on reruns. Take it easy, Binder. Thank you, Jess, the Sonic Wave. We'll go back to the super chats in a bit. I want to give anyone who wants to give super chats more time to do it. Still plenty of time to get your super chats in. We got another patron. Is it Raymond or Ramon? I'm sorry, but Raymond or Ramon A. Thank you so much for supporting the show. I really appreciate you becoming a patron. And you will get another shout out next week. All right, let's. Actually, I wanted to talk about this for a little bit because. Oh, I need a drink of soda. I'm feeling both parched and in need of sugar and caffeine. Okay. Okay. Here we go. So the other day I was on Twitter, as I normally am, but I was on Twitter and I was going on a little bit of a rant about cryptocurrency. And I don't know if you guys saw, but the other day, not yesterday, but the day before, there was a huge crypto crash. All the currencies just woo, straight down. It was like just it's a line going straight down. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum Classic, um, Dogecoin. All the coins were literally just like. I'm sure someone's gonna be like, some crypto guy's gonna leave a comment on the video and be like, "This coin was fine." You know what I mean. The majority of the coins were on a downward spiral, and I just went on this rant because I think cryptocurrency is a joke. It is the most unserious thing I could possibly think of in terms of like what the people who advocate for it believe about it. Now listen, I don't care if hold on, we gotta call 1 second. Let me call you back, caller. Now I don't care if you admit that cryptocurrency is just another get rich quick money making scheme. It's just a way for you to, it's like a lottery where you bet on the right coin. And, in a few weeks, a few months, a few years' time, you see if you had the winning ticket. If that's why you're into crypto, okay, admit it. Because that's why you're into crypto. That's what cryptocurrency is all about. That is the purpose of it, right? The idea it's going to replace any currency or be some sort of decentralized monetary system that's the future of money. Maybe somewhere down the line, many, many, many decades and years, I don't know, maybe it will mature to that place. Okay, fine. I can't tell the future. But the system as it is right now, and I don't see anything in it that's giving me a hint of what's good to come. It's just a money-making scheme. And if you realize that, and that's why you're into it, that at least you're being truthful. I respect that. That's the thing about when Elon Musk went on SNL. The whole thing was bullshit, except for that one moment during SNL when he admitted to Michael Che that it's just a hustle. Dogecoin was a hustle. That's what it is. It's a hustle. Just that's if that's why you're into it. This rant might not even be for you. Whatever. But if you're one of those people who think like this is going to free the world of the fiat system and fiat whatever, and excuse me for, but and you were going to bring people out of poverty. And this is going to change the world. Listen, I will say there are some uses of blockchain, the blockchain technology that I've seen that could be interesting. I think the one good thing I saw from it that was interesting to me was it was being used for a royalty system for artists, where if an artist sells something and the transaction is marked in on the blockchain, then every time the person they sold it to sells it, the original artist receives a royalty, and that's tracked by the blockchain. I think that could be a cool way for artists in the future to especially independent artists and struggling artists to make sure they get paid for their work in perpetuity. That could be a cool, but again, that's not what the focus of this shit's on. No one's ever talking about, because as much as they want to believe that that's what this stuff is for, it's not the truth. The main purpose of all this shit, at least as it exists right now, is for a bunch of rich people to get even richer and a bunch of Joe Schmoes to get lucky along the way. And if you're one of those lucky people who's not, who's a working class individual who threw a few extra bucks you had into the system and you came out with lucky with a few thousand, 10,000, 100,000 extra dollars, good for you. I mean, but there's also way more losers, and you never hear about them. For every Bloomberg or Business Week article you see, or Forbes article you see, or Newsweek article you see about the Shiba Inu coin millionaire, there's fucking thousands more people who lost their shirt on this shit. And of course, you never hear about those people because A, that's not an interesting story, and B, like, people don't even really talk about their stock market losses. And that's considered like a legit way to invest your money in this country. So can you imagine the embarrassment they feel if they put all their money into fucking like, what were some of the shit coins I saw? Because meme coins are the big thing right now. Everyone's throwing out a meme coin. Elon Doge coin was one I saw. Akita Inu coin was another one. Everyone trying to take a bite off the success of Dogecoin. I mean, you don't think people have lost money there? Because let me tell you something about how this works. It's the same way the stock market works. For you to hear about those few people who made a ton of money, where does that money come from? Like, where do you think their winnings come from? It's just like the lottery. When someone wins millions of dollars in the Powerball, where do you think Powerball gets that money from? They get it from all the other people who bought their losing tickets. It's the same fucking shit with crypto, just like it is in the stock market. When you sell a stock and you sell it for more money than you paid for it, the person on the other end who is buying the stock, they might lose money off of it. That's where the money is coming from. So for every one of those millionaires who made money off Dogecoin or whatever, they are making it off the backs of even more people who lost a lot of money, or at least some money, in cryptocurrency. I mean, we're not talking about, like, listen, like, if you want to make money, like, if you're someone who's looking, like, provide something of value to people, provide a service. Like, I'm not even. There's people who probably don't. People hear the argument that's like, oh, digital currency. The idea isn't that it's digital. It's just that it's got no purpose. I mean, I read digital books, ebooks. I listen to digital music. I watch digital movies. I even pay for digital services. I pay for a podcast hosting company. I pay for various different services I use online. I can't hold that. I can't feel it, but there's something there that I can use. I could put it to some sort of use. Maybe you pay for a system that helps you send out your tweets to Instagram and Facebook. So, it's a service that helps you save time. Or maybe, you're just buying something to watch or read, like I said before. That's something you can do, something that has a purpose, whether it's entertainment or something that helps you run your business or your side project or your hobby, whatever. Crypto has no purpose. What is the purpose? There's nowhere you can go that takes crypto that also doesn't take US dollars. In fact, the sole purpose of cryptocurrency that I can see is just to invest in it, so then you can sell it when it takes off for US dollars. Like someone I was arguing with online, not even arguing, having a discussion with on Twitter. They were like, the left really needs to take a look at this stuff. Imagine you and your friends got together and traded via mutual aid coin. And I was like, okay, what can I do? Let's take the scenario. Me and all my leftist friends, everyone in the chat right now, in the YouTube chat right now, watching the live stream, we all get together and invest in mutual aid coin. And the purpose is to help people, because that's what he was or she was arguing, that, crypto will help you with your activism or whatever. Okay, so we get together, we start mutual aid coin. And I and this community I put together, we buy up this mutual aid, we create it, we buy up this mutual aid coin, we have all this mutual aid coin. What do we do with it now to help people? What do we do with it? Okay, say we decide we want to help people who are being evicted from their homes due to the pandemic by giving them some money. Okay, cool. What do we do with the mutual aid coin? We fucking transfer it into USD so we could give them the money. Let's say we decide we want to help out some people who are in need of some basic necessities. We go to the store. Hey, do you accept mutual aid coin? No, I'm sorry. We go to the manufacturers. Hey, do you accept mutual aid coin? No, I'm sorry. We don't. What is that? What the fuck is that? Let's say we even just decide among ourselves we're going to create the goods amongst ourselves. We're all very talented people. We can create a toothbrush and paper towels and things like that. Some toilet paper, food, even some basic food. We could go hunt. There's plenty of things we can do, and we'll distribute the mutual aid coin amongst ourselves. Okay, but then what do we do with that mutual aid coin when we have to go ahead and pay our rent or do other things with it? We fucking convert it into US dollars. Why are we wasting time trading this mutual aid coin when we get right to the fucking point and deal in US dollars to begin with? It's just like, it doesn't make any sense. And listen, I'm not talking out my ass here. I can open up all the various little crypto wallets I have on my phone. I have little bits of all sorts of crypto because as someone who covers all sorts of stuff in the tech world, I want to take part in this so I can understand it. I'm not coming out of nowhere. Are there people who know a hell lot more about cryptocurrency than me? Hell yeah, because honestly, I think it's fucking stupid and I don't give a shit about it. But it is important that I understand the very basics. So I've purchased all various cryptos. And let me tell you, some of this shit is so fucking hard to buy. In what mindset do you think normal people are going to start adopting this shit at any point in time? Like literally to buy some of these coins that are out there, you got to first buy one coin, Bitcoin or Ethereum. And then you need to convert it via Coinbase to another type of coin. And then send that coin to another exchange like Binance or KuCoin. And then you take that and you connect your Pancake Swap or your Uniswap to it. And then you connect your wallet to that. And then you transfer the Bitcoin that you transferred to Binance Coin into Tether. And then with Tether, you buy the coin you actually want to fucking buy. And along the way, each step, you're paying fees every single time you transfer one coin to another coin. It is the most ridiculous shit ever. And the funny thing is, the crypto world shits on those shit coins and the meme coins. And I sort of have probably a more shocking view to you. All those meme coins and shit coins, are they worthless? Fuck yeah, they're just as worthless as the rest of them. Probably even more so. But at least they make a little bit more sense. Like the Shiba Inu coin and all those other coins I just mentioned, all the rando coins out there. There's an ass coin and a MILF coin I saw. There's like all sorts of different adult coins that are going out there. Like at least they provide the thing I mentioned before. Like when you buy a digital service, you want some form of entertainment or something. I can see people buying those shit coins and meme coins because they got a theme. They're gimmicky. It's like trading cards. You're buying it because you want that coin. It's like a hobby, a collection type thing. That I even understand, even though, I mean, it's still, but that I even get a little bit. but the system makes it even so fucking hard to buy those. It's so like it doesn't even make it's like really it's like imagine dealing with a currency where a single unit of it, a dollar, like imagine the US dollar, you put a dollar bill and it was, how much is Bitcoin now? $38,000, $40,000. Imagine going to the store and buying $100 worth of goods. You got to go to the store, you got to go to the grocery store, and you got to buy $100 worth of goods. Imagine trying to pay with 0.012987 of your dollar. It's fucking madness. You'd never do it. And then imagine you walk in and the amount you have is enough to buy all your grocery items. But by the time you get to the fucking checkout, because it sways all over the place, the worth of it, you can't afford it anymore. And then the decentralization idea of it. None of these coins are decentralized. They all got some foundation or developer team that's running the show. And they all got a shitload of coins. Why is fucking Satoshi, who we don't even, this anonymous guy out there who started Bitcoin, it's decentralized. He's got like I don't even know how many coins. You can look it up. It's easy to look up. That's the one good thing about the shit. It's easy to look up this stuff. and see what addresses have how many coins. Again, that could be a cool use of the blockchain, I guess, down the line once they find a goddamn use for this shit. But also none of this, all the cool uses I've seen have to do with the blockchain stuff. None of it actually with the crypto itself. But okay, so on top of that, let's get back to why all this shit dropped the other day. So on top of that, you have this currency, and not just a currency, multiple different currencies that are so beholden to the whims of some of the most powerful, most richest, most elite in the entire world. Elon Musk fucking goes out there and tweets, and based on a single tweet, whatever is in his mind that day, coin goes up, coin goes down, coin crashes. Elon Musk walks outside, drops his pants, and shits on the floor. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. Let's see what the crypto does. And then they're begging him on Twitter. Go to his replies on any of his tweets. Elon, please tweet about Doge. Please, it's so freeing. Owning this cryptocurrency is so freeing from the system. No masters, no leaders. Fuck the government. Elon, please tweet about it so we can make more money. Like, do you listen to yourselves groveling at the foot of a billionaire and thinking you're free? It's so you sound sad. Very sad. Very, very sad. Very sad. And then the crash happened because the crash happened for a few reasons. First of all, crypto has been sort of weak ever since Elon went on SNL, which is funny. Shows how successful that was. But what I think really that was the big players. So I'm going to SNL and thought, this is the peak right now. I'm going to make some money. I'm selling. Everyone's going to buy in because they see it on TV or they think more people are going to buy because it's seen on TV. We're all selling. And so you had those major players sell. And then you continue down the line where Elon then came out because of all the issues with how much energy this fucking shit consumes and how it's bad for the environment. And wow, suddenly Elon takes a look at him accepting Bitcoin and says, maybe that's a bad look for Tesla, the company that's all about energy efficiency and being better for the environment. Maybe it's a bad idea, a bad look that we're promoting this shit so much. So he drops Tesla's support for accepting Bitcoin. And then that drops the cryptos as well. And then on top of that, or after that, when it really crashes, some news came out of China where, well, the news was sort of misreported. Here, I believe people were saying that China banned cryptocurrency. Well, they've already have various regulations in place on crypto over there that makes it harder to buy and invest in it. They just renewed those laws, but that was enough to make crypto completely tank. And really, I should tell you, none of these events on their own really make crypto tank. What makes crypto tank is that the people who hold the majority of the shit, i.e., the people who are very rich enough already to have bought into this shit at the amount they have, whether it's buying a ton of it or B, being able to afford a ton of it, they interpret this as bad for the market. So they all sell because guess what? Your decentralized monetary system, it's controlled by the very rich and elite people who own most of these fucking coins. So they all sell because they interpret this as bad news for the market, for the technology, for the industry. They want their money. They want to get out. They're getting their big payday. The whole shit tanks because of that. Because let me tell you, it wasn't regular people, all those people who own whatever coins they could afford, because they weren't selling. That news means nothing to them. China banning crypto? Why the fuck does some Dick and Jane who read about crypto after it went up after the whole GameStop stock thing, why would they care about the news from China? They put a few $1,000 into crypto thinking, hey, maybe I'll get rich too. Why? What the fuck does the China news matter to them? What the fuck does Elon's Tesla news matter to them? It doesn't. They're not invested into it like that. They didn't put their money into crypto because they see its future and they want to hold and make sure the price goes up and that it's worth something. So all those people put the money into crypto when it got big, i.e., when it was at its peak prices, they're all in the red right now. And you can say, they just got to wait around and crypto will go back up. What if they don't got the time to wait around? They need the money. They thought they were in it for a short period of time. They thought, hey, I'm looking at the market these past few months. I don't really understand this shit, but it ebbs and flows a little bit. But, at most I pull out and lose, $50, $100, $200. And maybe I have $50, $100, $200 to waste. Maybe that's like, money I make every week that I put towards movies and popcorn and extracurricular fun activities, hobbies. That's, money I could waste. But the thousands of dollars I put in, I would pull that out immediately if it was going down too much because I don't have that much to waste. Well, those people are fucked right now. Unless they could wait for the next crypto revival, if it even comes. I know a lot of people think it's going to come, and I do think it'll come again. I do think crypto will go back up again because people are so into this shit, and the people who are so into this shit have a lot of money to spend on this shit. But those people might not have time to wait. And who knows, maybe it won't go back up to those prices. I mean, point of the rant. If you're into this shit, just be truthful. Don't pretend you're into it because you think it's going to change the world or because you think it's going to lift people out of poverty. One thing people who want to be who are in poverty love is all the fucking transaction fees that come with this shit. They love that shit. You should check out, if you don't want to know what I'm talking about, check out stuff like Ethereum gas fees. Fucking hundreds of dollars just to send a transaction. And here's the thing about that too. And people were saying, oh no, it's not meant to send small amounts of money. It's, it's more of it's not even really meant to be a monetary system. Whatever it is. The idea that you'd spend hundreds of dollars in fees and it's a flat fee, depending on how many people are using the system. And get this. Now, this is the real fucking joke. You can spend more money to jump the line to make the transaction. So someone who spends less than you could pay for who spends less than the transaction fees, you could spend more to jump ahead of them to secure the transaction faster. So you don't have to wait, 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes, an hour for the transaction to go through, or B, to even ensure the transaction happens to begin with. And I've meddled around with this shit. I've had failed transactions because I didn't pay a high enough Ethereum transaction fee. Can you imagine thinking that shit is going to be adopted by normal people? By people who don't have tons of money to spend on people fucking hate fees. People hate paying taxes when they sales tax. They're going to pay $100 in fees depending on how busy. Imagine you went to a store and you went to use your debit card to buy a pack of gum or even to buy you went to the Apple store to buy I don't know, AirPods, a MacBook. Go as low or as high as you want. And they said, well, sir, the transaction fee right now is $200. And you go, oh, wait, let me check this over here. And you go over there and you come back. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Very busy right now. The transaction fee is now $300. Can you imagine if it was a fucking crapshoot? If your debit card swipe went through? Or if you had to wait fucking 20, 30 minutes for your debit card swipe to go through? This is the new system that's supposed to replace that shit, right? It's supposed to be more convenient. It's like ridiculous, man. Just admit that it's a... And listen, if you've made it rich from this shit, good for you. I mean, what am I gonna say? Everyone's got... As the $1 Million Man says, everyone's got a price, right? But don't, like, fake the idea to make yourself feel better that you're doing something. It's the... Right now, and I'm gonna stress right now, because listen, like I said, but most of this has to do with the blockchain. There seems to be some uses for this, but that's like I'm sure there are some small tech companies or developers working on legitimate uses for the shit, but that's not what's getting any attention or the money or that's not what people are caring about when they're getting into this stuff. It's buying a Powerball ticket. It's investing in the stock market. It's buying Pokemon cards. Well, actually, not even, because at least the Pokemon cards, even if you don't sell them, even if they drop in value, you could still play the fucking Pokemon game with them. Can't do shit with any of this cryptocurrency if it drops in value. And another thing I always see people say, you're basically describing the stock market, right? And the stock market's fucking stupid too. Like you think, like, yeah, it is the stock market. It is, and both are stupid. You think I'm a leftist that advocates for the stock market? You think I'm a pro Wall Street guy coming here with this take? It's all a system to ensure the rich get richer. And yes, in order to get those stories in the news about, hey, you too should get into this shit, it does require some ordinary people to strike it lucky and make a ton too. If you're one of those people, good for you. Just please stop pretending you're changing the world or doing something for the greater good. You just made yourself a couple bucks and, you got to look out for yourself. I get it. Oh, I'm sorry. I did forget about one important use of cryptocurrency. To fucking fund far right-wing extremists, literal terrorist organizations, because they can't make money or accept donations and funds from mainstream platforms. But they can't accept crypto. I had someone yelling at me on Twitter saying how, like, the left needs to stop ceding this cryptocurrency ground to the right. We should get into this too. Otherwise, we're just giving them all this money, but not getting into it. That's not what we're doing. The system was built with these sort of people in mind. Who do you think developed this shit to get around fiat currency? Who do you think developed this shit to get around using the US dollar? This is a libertarian ideal. These developers that came up with this shit have these very freedom-loving, anti-regulation, anti-taxes individuals in mind. The system was built for them. It's not that they see the genius of it and we just don't know. No, it was built for them to use it this way. And you know what? Most of these right-wing extremists, these right-wingers and these terrorist groups, they're not crypto advocates who understand the technology, got into it early or some shit. Their supporters are the very type of people who are into cryptocurrency, and they say, hey, we're the type of people who built this shit or got in early on this shit. We got tons of money now because we are those rich elites that I was talking about earlier. We want to send you money because you're the type of people we had in mind to begin with when we get investing in this shit. Here, let me show you how to set up a wallet. And I'll send you $100,000. You think like Nick Fuentes or Milo Yiannopoulos or whichever one of these guys is using crypto, you think they had the foresight to see cryptocurrency? Are you kidding me? These guys aren't like technologically like savvy or anything. This system was built for them in mind, even if they have no idea how to use it or didn't even know it was being made. The people who were drawn to them are the very type of people who created this whole system. You think if leftists just started getting into crypto, there's a bunch of like leftist cryptocurrency advocates who struck it rich, who are going to send leftists a ton of money? Oh boy, going really long. I am going to now. There was a video. Oh wait, let's talk about this too while I'm here. Oh no, I just opened the wrong window. 1 second. Where is this? 1 second. All right, so I'm speaking of all this crypto stuff. I am on. Where is it? Okay, cool. So I'm on Twitter this morning. I wake up early. Kids wake me up. I log on to Twitter while they're watching Pokemon in the morning. And I open up my Twitter and app, and Twitter recommends me this tweet right off the bat. And it's from PragerU. And first of all, that's hilarious that Twitter thinks I want to see PragerU stuff. And they're right. I do want to see PragerU stuff. Absolutely. Please, Twitter, send me more PragerU stuff. I'm being legit. I want to see this shit because it's fucking ridiculous. But this tweet was so funny. Because if you really want to, if you really want to understand the conservative mind, this sort of shit is truthfully perfect. Because this is what they think politics and policy and the United States of America is all about. Let me pull up this tweet. So this PragerU tweet reads, since the left is so much more interested in fixing society than in fixing the individual, politics inevitably becomes the vehicle for social improvement. He thinks he's making a critical point. What do these guys think politics is for? That's like the very definition of it. That's the purpose of policy. The purpose is literally fixing society. Well, first of all, it's funny he admits that the left has used politics to fix society and has become a vehicle for social improvement. Thank you for admitting that the left has been working. People are being helped by leftist ideals. Thank you for admitting that. Sorry, I got the sniffles. I can't get over this tweet, honestly. What do these guys think politics is for? Like, from the sounds of it. From the sounds of it. Since the left is so much more interested in fixing society than in fixing the individual. Fixing the individual, from the sounds of it, is PragerU, like, did they mistake politics for like a self-help book? Did they mistake politics for like a life coach? A good therapist, maybe? Maybe that's what they've been looking for this whole time. You need a therapist, Mr. Prager? Do you need a therapist, Mr. Prager? Because politics has never been about fixing the individual. It has always been about society as a whole. You gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. These guys love to talk about the Constitution, right? Have they ever read it? Like, everything these guys talk about, they seriously don't know what they have no idea what they're talking about. I guess the whole promoting the general welfare was just like a figment of my imagination, right? What do they think that means, the general welfare? My God. Oh man, I gotta blow my nose, don't I? I'm getting the sniffles here. You might have heard him. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. The show's not over yet. Give me just 1 second, folks. I'm back. Thank you for fixing the camera here 1 second. Thank you for your patience there. Sorry, folks. I'm you guys know I'm a little bit I came down with a little something, and I'm getting over it. It's going away, but I'm every now and then it comes back. But I do want to let me finish reading these some of these super chats, and then we're gonna sit back and relax and watch a video. Samantha Sider with a super chat says, use the app Boycott for an easy way to boycott Israel. Dominic says, super chat, did you see Vosh's insane charity stream? for Palestinian relief. I did see it, not all of it, obviously, and I tuned in and saw a little bit of it. He got a lot of people watching, right? I know Felix from Chapo did a really successful stream too. Prairie with 2 super chats. Planting season is over. 4,800 acres in the dirt. With a coin emoji. I'm making a cryptocurrency kernel coin. Coin backed. Corn backed, excuse me. You should call it corn coin. Corn coin. I'm so sorry about these sniffles, folks. I'm not blowing my nose on camera. Sorry, Dominic. Have no shame, he says. Blow your nose on camera. No. Never. But all right, let's do this. Let us watch Tim Pool. That's right. I'm gonna subject you all to Tim Pool, but I'll guarantee you it'll be worth it. And you guys know me. You guys know I'm good when it comes to this stuff. Especially Tim Pool. I did an episode on him before. Pulling up this video. Okay. So I'm online the other day, and all of a sudden I see screenshots being posted of Tim Pool on Fox News. And I'm thinking to myself, what is Tim Pool on Fox News for? Like, I know he goes around and usually talks about big tech and how conservative voices are being censored online, which they're not. But I'm like, what do they have him on for now? Is this another big tech thing? Or, that's the thing that's his thing on the right? But no. They have Tim Pool on to talk about COVID and mask wearing. Who is Tim Pool to talk about this stuff? I mean, listen, he can certainly talk about it on his show. And, if you want to, invite Tim Pool on your show to talk about this stuff, fine. He's welcome to talk about it, obviously. But Fox News has a wide array of guests they could choose from. Maybe a specialist, an epidemiologist. I don't know, someone with a medical background. I don't know who you'd want to talk about all this medical health stuff with. Why not call up the fucking guy who's got a YouTube channel, right? Let's watch this clip. Let me just pull it up here. Give me 1 second. Here's Tim Pool on Fox News.
The CDC says it's time for you to take your mask off, but as we told you about last night, that fight, it's far from over. The media will take up the challenge of keeping you masked. Here's the New York Daily News today in an editorial. Masks should remain with us, becoming part of our everyday lives, even as the COVID-19 pandemic, science willing, of course, subsides. We should never fully return to our maskless society where only healthcare providers donned a mask, because judicious use of masks will continue to save lives. Masks now, masks forever. Joining me now with his take is Tim Pool, the host of the Timcast. Tim,
where is this going to go? Let's see.
Enjoy your work. You're unpredictable. You're an independent thinker. It's one of my favorite things.
He's unpredictable. I mean, he's pretty predictable. If you watch just a little bit of Tim Pool, he's pretty predictable.
See in people. What do you make of this? What's this about? Is this about? Is this truly, by the way, neuroses that's about keeping people from getting sick?
I don't think it's about keeping people from getting sick. I think stories like this in the Daily News are just an excuse people need because they don't want to take their masks off. We've seen certain individuals like David Hogg say that they're scared people.
Whoa, hold on. Is this guy criticizing? Let me rewind a little bit. This guy criticizing people for wearing an article of clothing? An unnecessary, according to him, article of clothing? One that serves no purpose? This guy?
take is Tim Pool, the host. I always enjoy your work. You're unpredictable. You're an independent thinker. It's one of my favorite things to see in people. What do you make of this? What's this about? Is this about? Is this truly, by the way, neuroses that's about keeping people from getting sick?
I don't think it's about keeping people from getting sick. I think stories like this in the daily news are just an excuse people need because they don't want to take their masks off.
Tim, what is that on your head? What are you wearing on your head right now? Are you outside? Is it December, January, February in New York? Are you broadcasting the show from Alaska right now, Tim? You're indoors too, right? You're going to go on live TV, national television, cable news, and complain that people are still wearing their masks, an unnecessary article of clothing, when you are wearing a beanie indoors. Indoors. In Washington, D.C., where I know that's where your compound is, right? You say it yourself. You broadcast from D.C. or the general area, right? Virginia, Maryland, that area. In the middle of May. What purpose is that beanie serving you? And you want to talk about and people who hate masks, talk about the health risks. You know, heat leaves your body from the top of your head. So by keeping that beanie on your head when it is 70, 80 degrees, while indoors means probably even hotter if you don't got the ACs blasting. And if you're outdoors, oh man, the sun radiating on you and your body looking to get rid of that heat and it's all being trapped inside, you're going to overheat. You're going to pass out. Tim, you got to take that beanie off, buddy.
We've seen certain individuals like David Hogg say that they're scared people will think they're conservatives if they're not wearing a mask. So it's kind of creepy, and it makes me a little bit pessimistic that there are people who are now openly admitting they're ignoring the science.
Right.
Because
no one is ignoring the science. People have, first of all, people still need to wear masks if they're not vaccinated. And there are more than half of the country is not vaccinated. So I truly don't know what this urge for people to unmask them. If you're vaccinated and you feel comfortable taking your mask off, the CDC has said, sure, go ahead. Go ahead. But this is all based on science. And also, people have decided, they've decided to continue wearing masks because they've seen, hey, this past year, not only did I not get COVID, I didn't get the flu. I didn't get the common cold. I didn't get sick at all. Hell, until just this past week, I haven't been sick in like a year and a half. Usually I don't get sick that often, but usually definitely like once a year. I would say this past year and a half stretch is the longest I've not gotten sick. It's because the mask works. Not just for COVID, but for other things too.
tribal partisanship or just trying to look like they fit in. It's just quite weird.
We talked about this again last night, Tim. It is being used as something other than a protective mechanism. It's being used for something other than science. And it seems to be something that even Dr. Anthony Fauci is admitting. I want you to listen to this.
Like, who cares, though, even if that was the case? Who cares? Are you going to start policing everyone who you deem to be wearing an unnecessary article of clothing? Are you going to go after hipsters who wear scarves during the summer just to look cool? Are you going to go after year-round beanie wearers? I mean, that tie, what's that tie doing for you, Fox News host, buddy? What is the purpose of that tie? Your shirt doesn't fall off without it.
Now, and I'll get your reaction.
How does it change your mask wearing practices?
I am now much more comfortable in people seeing me indoors without a mask. I didn't want to look like I was giving mixed signals. But being a fully vaccinated person, the chances of my getting infected in an indoor setting is extremely low.
So he's wearing the mask as while vaccinated as a signal, Tim. It wasn't because science dictated it.
Yeah, and since the beginning, Fauci has basically been on every side of the argument.
First of all, the reason he has to do that is because of the people who aren't vaccinated. What don't you, I mean, I know it's purposeful at this point, but what don't you get? Yeah, Fauci, as the face of this, has to portray a image that speaks to the majority or all Americans. And the fact of the matter is, he's basically saying he wore his mask to not give people the wrong idea. Yeah, he wore his mask to make sure that people who aren't vaccinated know they still need to wear masks because they see the fucking doctor who's been giving all the advice for the past year and a half still wearing his mask. It's not that difficult.
Moving, throughout the past year, I came to a point where I realized he just kind of repeats what he hears on TV, and then people believe him. I think if you're somebody who's actually reading the data, you're following the CDC, and you're looking at these guidelines, you start to realize that he's a bit behind the curve. He once said, don't wear masks. Then he said, wear masks. Then he said, hey, if you're vaccinated, you need them. Now we're hearing you don't. So
Well, it is true that first half, they fucked up the messaging in the beginning of all this. They said that the CDC, and I think Fauci as well, said early on that you didn't need masks. But they were talking about the N95 masks. And the reason they were talking about the N95 masks is they needed those masks for the medical personnel when these masks were hard to come by. And people were all buying them up. So that part is true. Okay. But the part about wearing your mask when you're vaccinated that came just a few weeks ago for a short time, that's because they were still doing the work on it. They were still testing it. They were still checking things out, how it would go. Like, that was a really short amount of time they said you still needed your mask. And as a few weeks went by and they realized, hey, all good, there's no spike. Like, isn't this the very definition of being careful and looking at the data and following the data? So they had this huge pool of people for the first time take these vaccines. They had told them, wear your mask indoors. People did that. They don't see the cases spiking. So they say, hey, this seems to be working. Let's test out the next thing. They test it out. They decide, hey, you don't got to wear masks anymore indoors if you're vaccinated. I mean, that's literally the definition of following the data. They changed the rules based on the data they saw.
Where did the data come from that all of a sudden the rules have changed just in the blink of an eye?
From all the people who are getting vaccinated! Where have you been? These past few months have been the biggest change in this whole pandemic. Millions and millions of people in this country have gotten vaccinated. The vast majority of those people in the very groups most susceptible to succumbing to the worst of the coronavirus. Massive change in the past few months, buddy. Where have you been? Where have you been?
Following the CDC and you're looking at these guidelines, you start to realize that he's a bit behind the curve. He once said, don't wear masks. Then he said,
I had to
wear masks.
rewind
Then
it a
he
little
said,
bit
"If
because
you're
I just had to hear
vaccinated,
that
you need
again.
them." Now we're hearing you don't. So where did the data come from that all of a sudden the rules have changed just in the blink of an eye?
Hey,
and I'll
Tim,
tell you what really freaks me out is that there.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What freaks you out,
What
Tim?
freaks you out?
It's just freaky that there are people whose opinions are based on the TV doctor instead of just looking at the research.
It's really scary that people are just basing their opinions on the actual legitimate doctor who goes on television and not the fucking YouTuber who wears his beanie year round, who gets his data and his info from, and he said this, and I'm going to show you in a minute, a video. He said the Daily Mail is where he reads for his information. The fucking UK right-wing gossip rag.
Following the guidelines.
Just unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's like, where is this? Where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? And how he tries to bring in David Hogg, just name drop someone who he knows the conservative base is gonna hate. I mean, who cares what David Hogg thinks? You guys are the only ones obsessed with David Hogg. Conservatives are so obsessed with a kid who tried to use his experience from a school shooting to advocate for gun control. So obsessed with this kid. Children, you guys are. David Hogg's not the kid. You guys are. He's just a young man with an opinion. You guys are treating him like he's some sort of powerful figure. Who cares what David Hogg says? And, you know, Tim Pool has a lot to say about mask wearing. He's also very anti-lockdown. You know, he obviously follows the science. Obviously. Very serious thinker. Well, here's what Tim Pool... I decided then, so I decided to look back at what Tim Pool had said about COVID over the past, year and a half. And, he does a daily show. I didn't have time to look through it all. I just had a few hours to after I saw this video to prep for it. So I'm quickly looking through some of his stuff, and I come across a show from right before the COVID hits the U.S. And here's Tim Pool's take on COVID then.
Yeah.
Let's read this story. This is one of the latest stories we have.
There it is, the Daily Mail, where Tim Pool's getting all of his COVID and coronavirus information. The stuff that's feeding him all the information that makes him qualified to talk about coronaviruses on national television.
My family is in lockdown in Wuhan. Wisconsin father begged U.S. State Department to let his wife, his 5-year-old daughter, and his 10-month-old baby leave on the only evacuation flight out of the coronavirus-stricken city. I just want to say right now, it kind of sounds like a bad idea. Like there's a quarantine for a reason. Should we probably... Do we tell American...
It sounds really bad for those 2 kids. It's terrible.
Hey, man. You're quarantined, dude.
It's true. It's like you're in ground zero.
Well, this is him with like his co-host.
Like the most, susceptible
people,
which are babies,
Yep.
No, I feel bad for them, but they could probably at least be checked, can't they? You know,
No, it's 2-week incubation period.
No, you gotta stay locked
Yeah,
down.
it seems crazy to me that we're talking about bringing people. There was a one story I saw of someone like from New Zealand.
Yeah,
it's like trying to hop, like begging the U.S. and like other countries to like get me out of here.
Yeah,
like streets are all deserted and everything. I don't know, man. I kind of feel like you should probably stay. Is that?
Oh, really? Really?
I kind of feel like you should probably stay. Is that callous? Does that mean?
No, I mean
it's quarantine, bro.
If this
that is the definition of having to change your lifestyle because of an infectious disease that's pandemic. Right. Sorry, guy, that this is happening to. I believe in all this stuff when I'm not affected by it, right? That's following the science, right? When the lockdown said here, I changed my tune because I'm following the science, and the science is now affecting me, right? But listen to how he's talking about this before it comes here.
Not to be something that's, you know, fatal, then they should stay.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of? Like, you ever see those movies where they always break quarantine?
Yeah.
I can't stand it.
I can't.
What was that movie with
it.
like I think Ryan Reynolds was in it or something, and it's called, I think it's called Life.
I haven't seen that.
And it's like I can't remember, but I think it's like Idris Elba.
How's it about?
He like
this
puts his
movie?
hand in that
Go ahead,
glove, and like there's like a life form, and then it like breaks his hand or something. Maybe there was a different character. And they're like, we got to get him out, and they're like, no, he's quarantined. I don't care. And then they open the door anyway, and it's like the whole movie is based on you violating the protocol.
Yeah, exactly.
That you're not supposed to violate.
That's a premise hole or a plot hole in so many movies like that.
Oh, it is.
So why do they do this?
There's always that one person.
You know,
like,
man.
I don't care about this quarantine.
More than one person, I can let you know. It's not a plot hole. Let's keep going. I wonder where these people, where these screenwriters, where these directors and these producers, where they come up with these cockamamie lame brain ideas. I wonder where they have this idea that people wouldn't listen to fucking quarantines.
Hole or a plot hole in so many movies like that too.
Why do they do this?
There's always that one person.
You know,
like,
man.
I don't care about this quarantine. Open the door.
I can't stand movies. You know, I can't stand movies where the plot is based on character stupidity.
I can't stand real life either. That's usually inspired by.
Exactly.
Great.
I can't stand it.
Why couldn't they make it like the alien broke the quarantine?
Yeah.
And they were like, we did the right thing.
We had no choice in this matter.
Instead, it's always like, you know, but I got to be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe it is realistic.
Oh, it is.
Like you have this story where people are...
Fast forward just a couple of months and you'll see how realistic it is and where you lie on this issue, my friend.
Believe they have it. They're like, I'm clear. I'm
No,
good.
they don't care. I don't think...
Okay, fast forward.
I got to be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe it is realistic. Like you have this story where people are trying to get out of the quarantine and the U.S. is actually evacuating people.
Because they don't believe they have it. They're like, I'm clear. I'm
No,
good.
they don't care.
Right.
I don't think...
Doesn't that sound like other people who walk around who don't think they have to wear masks anymore and aren't getting vaccinated? Right. That does sound like them a little bit, right? Doesn't it, Tim? Right.
Story where people are trying to get out of the quarantine and the U.S. is actually evacuating people.
Because they don't believe they have it. They're like, I'm clear. I'm
No,
good.
they don't care. I don't think they care. I think, you know, the concern of people is me.
That's true.
It's like, I got to get out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's read a little bit more of this story.
Right. Yeah. Let's read a little bit more of this story from the Daily Mail, though. I cut out a large chunk of him just reading this story. It's basically just a personal story of this family from Wisconsin that were stuck in China early on in the pandemic. I believe it's from like February or maybe even like late January. But let's get back to this. This is of last year. This is before COVID hit the U.S. You know, when the science, the data and all the science that Tim consumes told him that those people had to stay in China, locked down and quarantined because it's the right thing to do. Otherwise, you're one of those fucking idiots in the movies that commit the selfish act that then spreads the pandemic and gets people killed. You know, you don't want to do that. So you got to pay attention to the science when they're over there. You know, when it affects me and I'm the selfish a-hole, the science, all of a sudden I interpret it a little bit differently.
Because, you know, I wanted to read this one because it feels a bit, it's a good story to focus on this individual, right? He's a human being. He's got a family, man.
Right.
He's got kids.
Yeah.
We want to save this family. They're Americans.
Yeah, definitely.
But man, it's a tough call, right?
It definitely is.
If coronavirus kills one person in America and it comes from him, then was it worth saving the guy on Facebook?
What if Tim? How would you feel? Let's do a little thought experiment here, my friend. How would you feel if one person, one beanie hat wearing individual, I'm just using a fantastical made up person. Let's just say there's this guy out there who has huge YouTube following, big guy on YouTube who really thought Donald Trump was going to win and predicted he was going to win by a landslide over many months. And was completely wrong on that by a lot. And also believes that whatever the NYPD press team puts out there, even when it comes out later that they were fucking lying about, shit being put in their milkshakes. But, all that, these just making someone up here on the fly, right? They wear beanie all the time and they go on cable news and they espouse all sorts of things about health precautions that are not necessarily looking out for people's best health, and they're just saying all this shit, and they have this huge audience, and they're like, anti-lockdowns, and they think this is all bullshit, and this has gone on for too long. Enough is enough. It's all don't wear your fucking mask. Now if one person, or let's say a couple thousand. But if even one person dies because of this one individual who went out here and espoused all this stuff to their huge, gigantic following, was it worth it for that person? Do you think they hold some responsibility, some accountability? I don't know. I'm just shooting the shit. Just making up some hypothetical scenario.
I'll tell you what, man. I feel for you, Sam. I really do. I don't want anybody to be hurt and be put in danger, but bro, you're in a quarantined city, man.
Yeah.
There is a disease. I know the mortality rate is projected to be relatively low right now, but if we pull people out of this and then it spreads and hits thousands of people in the US and there are deaths, it's like that could have been averted,
Oh, it could have been averted. It could have been averted. 500,000+ deaths in the US. It could have been averted. It definitely could have been averted. But it wasn't. And, Tim Pool, in another video I saw, defended the Trump administration's response to this. They have a huge role to play in the 500,000+ deaths that could have been averted. I would also argue that the talking heads, the beanie-wearing and non-beanie-wearing talking heads who espoused all sorts of right-wing talking points, anti-lockdown messaging, COVID conspiracy theories, all of them have blood on their hands as well about those 500,000+ averted deaths, deaths that could have been averted, excuse me. But remember, we listen to the science here, and the science always changes when it starts to personally affect you. Then all of a sudden, that data comes in. That data hits a little bit different. All right, folks. I'm going to read whatever super chats there are here, and then that's the show for today. Abby with a super chat. Sticker idea. Animated Binder double fisting with Coke in one hand and Pepsi in another. Doomed across the bottom. I forgot to ask. If anyone would like to help me with those avatar and stickers, I could use the help there if you're an artist of some sort. I realized I can do that and make that a bonus for people who want to use those avatars, emojis, whatever it is. If you have experience making those and you want to help me out, feel free to reach out to me. You could DM me on Twitter at Matt Binder. If you're a patron, you could message me on Patreon. You could email me, Matt, M-A-T-T, at xmattx.com. That'd be awesome if you could help me with that. And I don't want to take art for free, so I'll see what I can do in terms of a nominal fee that's equal to the amount of content I would ask of you, or you would be able to provide for me, because that would be cool. Abby is right. Tony with a super chat. My go-to response for someone harassing me for wearing a mask. Oh, honey, I don't normally wear this, but I smelled you coming. I mean, who cares about who wears a mask? It's such a non-issue. If people... First of all, I live in a part of Queens where people have been wearing masks for decades. In Queens. It's a normal sight here. Have a large Chinese and Korean community where I live. And a lot of them have been wearing masks for years and years and years and years. It's not that crazy. Mask wearing in some countries, in some cultures, has become just as normal as wearing a fucking beanie. Year round. Or when it's not cold. Or when you're indoors. I mean, it's simple shit. It's just people wearing an article of clothing. If you don't want to wear it and you're vaxxed, then according to all the medical professionals out there, you don't have to. Well, not all medical professionals. Some of them think this is too soon, and I sort of agree in terms of the number. I think the percentage who should be vaccinated should be higher. But the CDC, at least, is saying that's fine. You don't have to wear one. So don't wear one then. And if you don't want to wear a mask and you're not vaccinated, then get fucking vaccinated. All right, folks, that is the show for today. I hope you all enjoyed. Once again, if you're listening to the live show and you're not a Patreon member, please consider becoming a Patreon member, patreon.com/MattBinder. If you are a patron and you're a new patron and you haven't received the Discord invite yet, please let me know, and I will get you that Discord invite immediately. Well, not immediately, but I'll get it to you ASAP. I will attempt to get it to you immediately. You know the usual drill. I already dropped everything else. Follow me on YouTube, youtube.com/MattBinder, twitch.tv/MattBinder, at MattBinder on Twitter and Instagram. Search me, MattBinder, everywhere. Doomedcast.com for the podcast. Make sure you leave a review, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you go to ratethispodcast.com/doomed for all the places you could leave ratings. Follow the podcast on Spotify. Subscribe to the newsletter at misinfo.com. Short for misinformation, misinfo.com. Everyone else, I will see you all next time on Doomed.